additional $10 million, which will bring the total project to $214 million. I think anyone who's been around construction these days would say that a 7% increase in cost is not unreasonable for a project. The one thing that I will tell you that compelled us to bring this is that we have really great projects. And I think I've heard this council say we don't want to de-scope anything. And we have taken these projects with the cost estimations, with the architects, and we have value engineered, different kinds of treatments, furnishings, some of the things that would not be noticed. But when we start having to cut costs in the millions of dollars for something like a Geisman Community Center, which is a brand new build, and you start to really get it into the original budget, we would have to significantly decrease the size. We would have to take out some of the amenities that we really wanted to do. So that's what we're talking about here. I would tell you, just as an example, our initial estimates for Douglas Park are up almost 50%. That's $1 million project, but $400,000 is material. We're not going to spend that $400,000, but that's the initial cost estimate that came back. We had the Pine Hill Clubhouse came back significantly higher than we thought with the construction cost, because when we estimated it, the cost of lumber hadn't gone through the roof yet. It's 4 times the price now. So we're still working to VE that back. But what we don't want to do is continue to wait for the prices to come down or to take the value out of the projects and never get them done. We collectively said we want to get these done by the end of by the end of calendar year 2023. And this will give us the ability to do so. We will continue to do due diligence. We will report to you on every project when we have a cost that has gone beyond our original budget, but we want to deliver the projects that we all collectively promised to do. This will be cash from the city's funds that will come to this project. It's not additional bonds. So we have $200 million of bonds, $4 million of federal cash, and $10 million of local city cash that would go to these projects. And we hope that you're willing to support this for FY23.
Okay. I have Chase, Councilman Chase. You may.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One, just for emphasis, it says it on here, but obviously this is a cover line item, so as projects come along, you'll come back to the council. Yes, sir. Second question, and I'm sure this was discussed, and honestly, I would have asked you about it earlier, but it just came to me as we were sitting here because you reminded me of the $4 million from ARPA. Does it make more sense, and I'm just asking, to reappropriate ARPA dollars because this is due to supply chain issues from the COVID pandemic, like the $3.5 million from earmarked for the food desert in North Memphis and the $3.5 million earmarked for the hospitality hub, and create a $10 million pot that we know satisfies that number, and free up $10 million of unrestricted cash that aren't required to go through the sub-granting process that may make it streamlined to do those projects, and just switch the devil for the witch?
Hadn't thought of it in quite that way, Councilman, but we do know that we did some pretty good diligence on the ARPA funding that we knew would meet the requirements here. I think that's something that if the will of the body was to do something like that, what we're really asking for here is $10 million of latitude in FY23. So that's increased above our budget. So I think if you were to support this now, and if the body came back at some point, because we're not going to, just to be clear, we're not going to spend this $10 million now. It's going to come during the course of the year.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to complicate the issue, and I promise you, literally as you were talking, came to me, so I figured I'd ask you a question. I'm supportive of this, and if Chief Ford and her team and Chief McGowan at some point say, hey, this might be a better way to do it because of the latitude it needs one way or the other, I'm sure you guys will come back with an alternative solution. But I'm with you. I yield the floor.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wish to speak? Anybody virtual?
Yes, I have a question just for clarification, but if somebody else spoke about you.
Councilman Jones?
Yes.
You're recognized.
Thank you. This $4 million, was that $2 million each year, or was that $4 million total from the first allocation? I think
it's a great question.
We sort of have tranches.
Yeah, we're checking right now. I believe it was 2 and 2, Councilman. And I do know that we've already spent $500,000 of the first $2 million. I did expend that. And we have, again, with the projects I have here, my aggressive forecasting, I know where I would spend $11 million of that 14 across all of the projects already. and there are some that have yet to come back with a bid. So 14 gives me comfort that we can get it all done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. I have a question. It seems like you got a lot of moving targets working with Accelerated Memphis. I'm hoping and praying you got a plan how you keep them all juggling at the same time, because I can easily see one going totally out and you sitting over here with one just starting and say, I can't finish it because I don't have sufficient funds. So what type of reassurance do you have to reassure us that won't happen?
I really appreciate you asking that question,
Okay.
Chairwoman. We have expended significant effort for Accelerate Memphis. For the most complex projects, we have some assistance. I'll give an example. We have contracted with some parties to help us with the construction management. So for instance, the very complicated parks projects, like we have a project for community center renovation and deferred maintenance. That's every community center, all 30 community and senior centers. And we have a package for pools. We have a number of pools, 17 pools across. Any one of those individually is complicated enough. We have a group of professionals that we've contracted that's within the budget of Accelerate Memphis who are experts at project management. The one example team I will give is the team that helped us with the convention center to bring that in on time and under budget. And they are masters of balancing all of these things to make sure that we stay in budget individually and that we don't forego one of the projects just because another one got out of control. So that's what we're doing. Okay. We have our planning and development team that is managing all of the Accelerate Memphis anchor projects in a very similar fashion. And just so everybody's aware, several times a week, every week at 7:30 in the morning, we gather to discuss for an hour each individual project here that we have or the packages and make decisions to make sure that we get these projects in on time and under budget. So we start before the day's work has begun to make sure that we have our complete focus on getting these projects done. So you have some real dedicated folks who are helping to do this. I can't tell you how many construction committee meetings I go to every week, but it's a lot.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for that information, and surely we'll be getting updates throughout the year on Accelerated.
We absolutely will.
So we can know where we're headed to. Okay, I need a motion on this particular item. It was moved and second. All in favor? Respond aye.
Aye.
Is there any
Aye.
objection? Not hearing any. That is a favorable action and will be carried forward. At this time, we're going to move on to the fiscal year 2023 operating budget overview.
So, good afternoon, Council. Shirley Ford, Chief Financial Officer. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you this afternoon and to provide you with an overview of the proposed fiscal year 2023 operating budget for the City of Memphis. And as the Mayor shared with you on April 19th, this proposed budget is following a couple years of uncertainty as we are stabilizing and finding new equilibrium in a post-pandemic environment. Back, please. One thing we have discovered during this process is that the traditional budget and planning process is not well equipped to handle and deal with the complex problems that local governments are asked to deal with. For example, in the past year, shifting operating practices to provide vaccines and promote public policy on personal safety, civil unrest, and the increased attention to racial disparities, reevaluating how public safety is provided to our community, and encouraging economic opportunity, all while continuing to provide core public services and rising to the demand for an increase in those services. It is apparent that solutions to complex problems are rarely contained within a single city division or even within local government alone. Traditional budgeting and planning processes have tended to budget strictly by division, as if they could stand alone without cross-divisional collaboration and in conjunction with outside organizations. And while division representatives will come to you in the coming weeks, starting today, to present their respective budgets, those budgets were developed as a comprehensive whole, each division playing an important part of the development as sources were reevaluated and adjusted within the divisions to provide the comprehensive budget that we believe is fair to our employees and meets the needs of our citizens in a meaningful way. Mayor Strickland has proposed to you an FY23 operating budget of $750 million. The development of the budget presented to you came after serious deliberations, financial analysis, and comprehensive strategic planning in alignment with other funding sources to ensure the maximum use of funds for the benefit of our city, our citizens, our employees, and our community. Next slide, please. This budget, like all others, was a collaboration of the mayor, my colleague, the Chief Operating Officer, Doug McGowan, members of senior leadership, and the entire finance division. This slide depicts the members of our budget team, and we have a couple new members. Those new members include Walter Person, Deputy CFO, who joined us in November, and Senior Budget Manager Cameron Kennedy, who joined us in December. Hit the floor running, decided that his whole family should suffer with COVID-19, a stomach virus, and a new baby all within the course of a couple of weeks while he was being oriented into the City of Memphis budget process. So we're really glad that he is still here. We also have two new budget analysts this year that you have not met before, Tristan Gately-Sweat and Chandra Lanier. There she is. Who joined the existing team of longtime employee Anita Taylor, Peggy Smith-Porter, and Denise Ware. I will add that we have faced some difficult technology issues this year, many of which were not readily apparent until we started processing the proposed numbers through the new budgeting program. In December, we encountered a forced update from the old Hyperion budgeting system to the Oracle Cloud-supported budgeting program. We have continued to work through those issues, especially with the assistance of our IT team and our HR compensation team, and as a result, we will be providing updated division information throughout the budget hearings to ensure you, as our legislative body, have the most updated and detailed information upon which to review, evaluate, and consider the matters that are brought before you. One noticeable difference in the division presentations will be the 5-year trend in the appendix. We will have that validated information from the new system by early next week, as well as a division level forecast. You already have the overall budget forecast, but we have been unable to get it through the system to provide it to you on a division level, but that will be forthcoming to you. Next slide. So during the early development of the budget, the mayor shared his guiding principles as the benchmark for his assessment. Always first to be addressed is the actuarially determined contribution, or the ADC, which legally must be at 100% required funding level. This year, we were forced to reduce the assumed discount rate from 7.5 to 7.25 to maintain compliance of 50 basis points to the Tennessee Retirement System discount rate, which during this past year was reduced from 7.25 to 6.75. So instead of budgeting around what was originally determined to be an $8 million reduction in the ADC, we were compelled to adjust to a modest increase in the ADC, and additional information will be provided in coming slides with more detail about our ADC. Also, the operating budget was provided for, addressed the investment in our city employees. While during FY22 provided a premium pay from ARPA funding, it was a one-time payment to the employees and did not impact the forward wages for the city employees. While the FY22 3% negotiated increase for Memphis Fire was predetermined, the mayor also wanted to provide raises for police and other general city employees. The cost of the 3% FY22 negotiated increase for MFD was $4.3 million to the current budget. The cost of the 5% proposed increase for MPD is $8.5 million. MPD received a modest 2% increase in FY22 without impasse. The cost of the 2% proposed increase for other general employees is approximately $3 million, and we will cover all of these in further slides. This balanced budget does not take into consideration any changes that may occur due to the outcome of the FY23 scheduled impasse hearings that I believe you have scheduled for the coming weeks. If found to prevail for the associations, the result of impasse hearings would add an additional expenditure to our proposed budget. Also addressed during this budget was a new approach to the ongoing issue to the blight of illegal dumping within our city. A strategic plan was developed within the parameters of the 2019 sales tax referendum that provided a program that will aggressively attack the problem while providing a budget-neutral impact solution to the general fund. This budget also provides a dedicated funding source to MATA and the creation of a new transit special revenue fund, and upon your approval of the program, will add to the currently restored operational funding to MATA of approximately $30 million, a dedicated funding from the time expiration of pilot payments that are currently dedicated to pre-K. This will require a change in the pre-K funding ordinance, and this will be presented to you as part of the FY23 budget proposal. This budget also took into consideration the maximization of other funding sources to contribute to the proposed budget, thereby serving as resource multipliers. We will be presenting the ARPA budget during the Finance Division presentation, but I wanted to remind you of the approved uses of one-time ARPA funding that has a direct impact on the FY23 operating budget. That includes $1.7 million toward youth service programs, the I Am Included, internships, summer programs, and MAPS, $1.2 million in community services toward Opportunity Youth, Manhood University, and WOWS, and $200,000 in grant funding at MAS. All of those are contained within the Executive Division budget. It also includes $2.9 million in mortgage assistance and home repair, and $15 million in broadband infrastructure initiatives in the HCD division budget. It also includes $2.4 million toward the Group Violence Intervention Program, $4 million in technology improvements in MPD public safety initiatives, $6.5 million in community policing fleet initiatives for public safety, a $4.5 million funding in public safety recruitment initiatives, and an additional $500,000 for staff support for that initiative, and $1 million in additional funding for the Healthcare Navigator program for Memphis Fire. And after all these considerations, the mayor required a proposed budget that provided sufficient funding to meet the city's core operating priorities and mission-critical initiatives without a reduction in workforce or an increase in the property tax rate. Next slide, please. This slide, slide 4, for those who are listening virtually, this slide provides the summary of the FY23 proposed operating budget in comparison to the FY22 adopted budget. This is always the starting point for the proposed budget analysis. All divisions were requested to budget flat to FY22 adopted budget, and as the development of the budget progressed, changes were made to the specific divisions that are impacted by the proposed budget. As you will see from the division presentation starting this afternoon, divisions were requested to bridge the increases from the FY22 adopted budget to the FY23 proposed budget in order to provide transparency of the proposed changes, especially in light of the FY22 current actuals, which all appear to be on budget overall. The administration believes that this provided a solid foundation for the building of the FY23 proposed budget. But as expected, there will be certain anomalies within some divisions, and those will be addressed as presented. But again, this proposed budget was developed as a comprehensive solution, not a division standalone budget. As I shared with you yesterday, the current year funding budget compared to the current year adopted budget accommodates the one-time adjustments that are brought to you for approval to the current operating budget. Those adjustments frequently do not represent the ongoing and year-over-year comparisons that are considered in the budget development. Next slide, please. This proposed budget takes into consideration the impact of the increase in sales tax activity. However, conservatively, some normalization is projected for the coming year due to inflation and an increase in interest rates. Also, many of the revenue lines were projected with stabilized pre-pandemic projections, and I will follow along with you on the slide. The local sales tax category is budgeted for a $23.6 million or 5% increase. This category includes property taxes, local sales taxes, franchise taxes, business taxes, and beer sales taxes. Property taxes are budgeted slightly higher due to the 1 penny added back from the pre-K allocation proposed. And local sales tax continue to trend high and are expected to be $15 million or 11% over the FY22 adopted budget and $10 million above the FY21 actuals. In the category of the state sales tax, this is also budgeted to increase by approximately $4.5 million or 6.8% over the FY22 adopted budget. This category includes state sales tax, state shared beer tax, the alcoholic beverage tax, and state special petroleum product tax. The increase in this category is driven by the upward trend in state sales tax, which is budgeted for FY23 at $68 million, a $4 million increase over the FY22 budget. In our next category, charges for services is up approximately $9 million or 28% over the FY22 budget. Material increases are largely due to a $2 million increase in street cut inspection fees and permits, a $1 million increase in traffic signals, and a $3.6 million increase in ambulance services. Other material revenue lines budgeted for FY23 currently include a $2 million increase in the MLG&W pilot, $13.5 million in sales tax referendum transfer for offset to healthcare premiums for police and fire, and an $11.4 million sales tax referendum transfer in for street maintenance. On slide 6, for those who are listening virtually, this is the general budget, general fund expenditures, again in the amount of $750 million, and includes proposed raises for all City of Memphis employees, restoration of the operational funding to MATA, and other general line item variances year over year. As you will see later from the presentation of the 2019 Sales Tax Referendum Fund, we are proposing the continuation of the 9% annual retention bonuses for police and fire for the next 5 years. However, we also believe that it is important to address the current wages of the public safety employees to be more competitive and to drive long-term results for the recruiting and retention of police and fire employees of our city. The proposed budget includes the 2-year increase, includes the year 2 increase of 3% for fire and a strategic plan for a 10% pay increase for police officers, 5% for FY23 and 5% for FY24. This also includes excuse me, the increase in the employer portion of healthcare cost. We are not passing the increase on to the employees under certain plans, and the city has decided to absorb that increase for FY23. It also includes $2.9 million in increase in service level requests, which we will cover in another slide. Those are budget neutral. It also includes a $1.7 million increase in city shop charges and a $2.3 million increase in city shop fuel costs. And if you've been to the gas station lately, you understand why we are presenting that in our budget. It also includes a $1.7 million increase in miscellaneous services and charges. That is also budget neutral. And also of note in our budget reductions, which looks funny on this page since it is a recovery, but we expect a $5 million increase in our state street aid expense recovery category based on where we are in FY22. And also of special note, but not immediately impacted on the FY23 budget, is the proposal for a 1% cost of living adjustment or COLA increase for the retirees. The impact of this adjustment is a $1.5 million increase to the ADC for the next 30 years, or in other terms, a $45 million commitment to our retirees. I'm happy to share with you that we are also in the process of developing a plan for the review of threshold factors that would prompt the evaluation for additional COLA increases in future years. While along with your guidance and approval, the city has moved beyond the financial challenges of 2013 and employed long-term solutions to address fundamental operational requirements, such as meeting the ADC, ensuring that there is a retirement plan for current employees, looking at progressive plans for healthcare and wellness, not just the current health plan, but wellness in general, and addressing the debt structure and capacity that plagued our city for years. You are to be congratulated for all your hard work, diligence, and refusal to be moved by temporary setbacks with your eyes on a progressive, sustainable future for our great city. Next slide, please. This slide, slide 7, indicates the structural changes that were requested for FY23. And a structural change is a change to a division that transfers a program or a person to another division as compared to the prior year. And while there were many structural changes within service centers of the Fire Division, Information Technology Division, the Memphis Parks Division, and the Stormwater Fund, there was only one cross-fund structural change that is requested this year, and that is the transfer of 4 positions from the Sewer Fund to the Stormwater Fund to accommodate the creation of a Fleet Support Services Center in the Stormwater Fund. Next slide. Slide 8 is the listing of the increased service levels, or ISLs, and that is any change to a division that adds a program or a person to the division as compared to the prior year. And while this looks like a lot, there is 80 on this list, I would like to discuss those separately. In City Council, there is one with an impact of approximately $77,452. There is in engineering an ISL count of 5 for $448,421. And in general services fleet, there is a request ISL count of 16 in the amount of $1,324,450. And in library, there is a request of 1 position in the amount of $67,500. For each of those divisions, and they will provide this information to you in their division presentations, those were budget neutral expenditures that were covered by the increase in the street cut and signal maintenance revenues in the engineering division that we discussed on the revenue page. For the next category, information technology, there is an ISL count of 41 positions for the amount of $3,372,300. This is a shift of expenditures from M&S. These were currently contracted employees that we are converting to full-time City of Memphis employees. So it is budget neutral between the categories of M&S and personnel. And certainly last but not least is the Public Works Division for the creation of the Illegal Dumping Service Center, which is a count of 15 in the amount of $1,440,599, and that expenditure is covered by an increase in the transfer in from the Referendum Fund. Next slide. Slide 9 depicts the proposed FY23 budget as allocated by divisions. As you can see, police and fire comprise 64% of the operating budget. FY22 is about 65%, so it is on track with the prior year. As the divisions present, you will see some changes from their FY22 budget, but this is the amount of the allocation of expenditures for FY23 in the proposed budget by division. Next slide, please. Slide 10 shows the actuarially determined contribution, or ADC, for the period of 2012 through 2022. As you can see, there have been some significant ups and downs over these years. FY23 ADC is $52.7 million, which is approximately $500,000 increase from the prior year, but it also reflects the decrease in the discount rate from 7.5 to 7.25 to maintain compliance with the Tennessee State Retirement System discount rate. Next slide. This slide is a little more informative. The slide on page 11 shows the actuarially determined contributions and the actual contributions across all funds for the period of 2012 through the 2023 proposed. The lines in blue are the ADC requirements that were required to, or that were the contributions that were to be met that year, and the number in orange or red, depending on how your computer reads, are the actual contributions that were provided. 2020 was the first year of the city's requirement of a 100% funding of the ADC after a 5-year phase-in, which occurred from FY15 through FY19, of progressive funding to achieve the 100% funding level. Once that level was met by the state requirement in 2020, the city is required to continually and each year meet the ADC requirement funding. Slide. So I want to talk a little bit more about the Sales Tax Referendum Special Revenue Fund. We will be providing additional information it is one of the special revenue funds, and we will be providing information as part of the Finance Division presentation. But I just wanted to highlight some of the things that are impacting the FY23 budget from the Fund 245 allocations. The FY23 Sales Tax Referendum Special Revenue Fund will allocate $15 million to the general fund as an offset, enabling a retention bonus to be paid out to active MPD and MFD category employees. This is general fund budget neutral and is part of the plan that we are sharing with you to continue for the next 5 years. For FY23, the Sales Tax Referendum Fund will also allocate $13.5 million to the general fund, enabling an offset of healthcare cost of active MPD and MFD categories employees. This is up $1.5 million from FY22. Also for FY23, this fund will allocate $2 million toward additional retention and recruiting efforts for MPD and MFD. This is a new allocation. And for FY23, the fund will fully fund the pre-K fund in the amount of $6 million. That is the same as FY22 allocation. Also in FY23, the fund will provide $10 million towards street maintenance initiatives in the general fund and will provide $1.4 million toward the blight illegal dumping initiative. Next slide. On slide 13, you will see a summary of the development of a 5-year plan for the 2019 sales tax referendum special revenue plan. The mayor and senior leadership members have continued to work with police and fire leadership, along with the leadership of the MFA and the IAFF, to develop a long-range strategic plan that not only serves the intent of the referendum, but also provides critical avenues to enable the city to continue to recruit and retain quality police officers and firefighters to provide for the safety of our communities. Sustaining and growing our public safety workforce has and continues to be one of this administration's top priorities. At the core of this plan is the 5-year extension of the annual 9% bonus of basic salary for all sworn police and fire personnel for fiscal years 2023 through fiscal year 2027, providing approximately $109 million toward this initiative. This provision is administered through, but is budget neutral to, the general fund. Together with the proposed and negotiated raises in this budget, we believe that this will make us much more competitive for recruiting talent and will be a significant influence on retaining valuable talent. We believe that this is a momentous milestone in the police and fire divisions. This plan also provides for the funding of the annual pension, health care, and OPEB, as well as the provision for reserves for each of those elements for those individuals who were restored as part of the 2019 sales tax referendum. This will also provide for the continuation of a benefit offset for health care costs for MPD and MFD employees. This plan also provides for the full funding of pre-K for the next 5 years, which allows for the reallocation of 1 penny from the property tax allocation back to the general fund, which supports this year's balanced budget and the redirection of the pilot roll-offs to a dedicated source for MATA. This plan also allows for the continuations of funds dedicated to street maintenance for the city. And as you see, over the 5-year plan, that will approximate $84.3 million. The plan, of course, is subject to your approval as part of the FY23 budget process. Next slide. Slide 14 shows the healthcare claims for active employees for the periods of fiscal year 2012 through 2021. As presented in slide 6, one of the expenditure components of the FY23 budget is the estimated increase in the employer portion of healthcare cost. Each year, the HR division spends a great deal of time internally and with their consultants to project the expected claims for the coming year. The projection is based on actual experience and healthcare trends. Chief Smith will be providing more detailed information during the HR division presentation. Excuse me. Next slide, please. Slide 15 shows the unassigned fund balance for the periods FY11 through FY21. The FY21 unassigned balance was impacted by the following factors: a $42.3 million favorable variance of local sales tax over the FY21 adopted budget, a $4.6 million favorable variance in gross receipt taxes due to the delayed filings of the pandemic, so some of the filings rolled over into the following year, a $22 million favorable variance in state shared sales tax revenue over the 21 adopted budget, a $1.5 million favorable variance in ambulance services revenue, and $9 million in CARES Act federal funding that was used to offset materials and supplies. We ended the year with one of our highest unassigned fund balances in recent history. Next slide, please. This slide, slide 16, is a summary of the budgeted funds that will be presented to you for approval and adoption for fiscal year 2023. Not all funds are required to establish and develop a budget according to the state laws. However, the following is a list of the funds presenting budget for adoption for FY23. Of special note, we will be presenting the ARPA allocations. That is not a required budget for state requirements, but we will be presenting that to you as well. Next slide, please. In closing, I would like to thank Mayor Strickland and this administration for the leadership and guidance that resulted in a proposed balanced budget. It was not an easy task. It has been my honor to work alongside this administration and with you in the past years to provide an environment of mutual respect and communication that enabled us to move forward. In the past 2 years, you have navigated through uncertain times, but you took the necessary steps to reach a short-term balanced budget in the time of uncertainty that was consistent with building a strong financial foundation that will endure over the long term. It is your obligation to approve a budget that you believe is the best next step forward for our city. It's my obligation to provide the most accurate, transparent information needed for you to make the budget decision that will guide us for the next year and hopefully the years to come. Along with Chief McGowan, me and the budget team will be available to answer any questions you may have or to provide additional information. As the divisions bring to you the proposed FY23 operating budget for your review, consideration, and approval, we thank you for your time, your resources, and your commitment to continuing to work together for the benefit and betterment of our city, our employees, our retirees, our communities as a whole. I yield the floor to Chief McGowan for additional comments or discussion, and then to you for any questions or requests that you may have. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that overview. I must let it be known that Councilman Colvette has joined us virtually, as well as Councilwoman Logan has joined us. At this time, we have two council people in the queue, and I'd like to recognize them. The first one being Councilman Morgan. Are you there? Councilman
Yes,
Morgan.
ma'am.
Okay, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much. Chief Ford, you talked about the division level forecast being forthcoming. Do we have an estimate on that?
Yes, sir. We expect that we will have that information for you early next week as you are being presented with division presentations.
Okay. And yeah, just to my colleagues, that's been such an important number to me. I don't know about y'all over the years, because as we look at the budget, we're always trying to figure what's gone right, what's gone wrong, and what can we do better. And without those division level forecast numbers, it is really hard for me to evaluate previous year's budgets, how close we got to getting it right. And therefore, as we're projecting, and that's what this is, I mean, as we pass a budget, we're guessing what monies or resources we'll need in order to meet, the goals and service levels that we want. And without those forecasts of how the last year went, it's really tough. I think almost 80% of my questions in the past have come from analyzing those forecast numbers. So that's something that's going to be critical to me to be able to cast a yes vote on anything in the future as we're going forward. I just don't have enough information yet. Next, what is the Chief Ford or Chief McGowan? What's the philosophical reason for having a dedicated funding stream for MATA rather than having that that revenue simply come to the general fund and then funding MATA out of the general fund?
Thanks for that, Councilman. I think that it is an accepted practice in many areas where there is a dedicated funding stream for initiatives that are important for the entire community. I think it puts an extra level of certainty for the agency that there will be funding that is dedicated to the purpose, and not realizing that, with 7 votes, you can change an ordinance and change anything. It's just an extra level of certainty. I think also, quite frankly, for the collective confidence of the community, there is something that says this is important to our community and so important that we have a dedicated funding stream to it. I would say that much like the public safety referendum, where we established a special revenue fund, saying this is so important to us that we are able to add value with pension and benefits directed at public safety. I think that's what the idea is, so that we can actually track the growth and it doesn't get covered up by any other pressures that we see. So that's the idea, to create the special revenue fund. I think the other piece is that when you have that fund, it seems easier, just as we did with pre-K, to allocate other revenues as they may come along. When we did the pre-K fund, we had 2 sources. We had the expiring pilots, and then we dedicated a penny of the general fund to it. And then we were able to track every year and say, yes, this is how much we have in our special revenue fund for pre-K. So it is a bit of a stance that says this is important, and it establishes for us our commitment to that mission going forward. What you were saying is absolutely possible. We can dedicate general fund monies to anything, but it is kind of a stand on something that is long sought after in the community here.
Yeah, and I'm not advocating that MATA doesn't need more money. I've made motions in the past for more, millions of dollars to go to MATA, and those motions failed. It's just, I don't, this is kind of a mechanism issue where I get if there are some revenue streams that are either restricted by law and they have to be spent in a similar fashion or related to, how that revenue is generated. But in general, if you can point out something that's not important in the budget, let us know and we'll cut it, because we got plenty of other things that are important. So if you start talking about what's a priority in the budget and we need to set aside special funding streams for everything that's a priority, all of a sudden you're going to be presenting budgets in front of the city council in terms of a general fund that are just minuscule. And it's going to take, I think, some of the decision-making authority away from the legislative body over time. Now it is, y'all are presenting it as this to us. We can approve it. And so it is our decision, but I would caution my colleagues in the council. I think it ought to be in the general fund. It ought to be something that we debate and deliberate and allocate to MATA through the general fund. I think they do need more revenue and resources, but I don't like us setting up all these different kind of special or dedicated revenue streams of spending. The tax referendum is different. We didn't do that, and that gets to my third question. That was done by the associations and the people in a referendum vote. And so my question to y'all is: in the past couple of years, we have. I believe we have purposely not followed the language of the tax referendum. And specifically, I was trying to pull up the slide again. I think it was about the $13 or $14 million that we transfer in from the tax referendum to the general fund. And we say it's to pay for police and fire health care. But that's not the case, because they're not getting any additional benefit in terms of that line item that they didn't have before. So it's really just a transfer into the general fund. And the argument over the past few years was that was necessary because of the dire situation of COVID. There was so much uncertainty. We were pulling from the reserve fund. These budgets are so difficult. We just need $13 or $14 million over from the tax referendum. in order to stabilize our general fund. Things seem more stable now, but that line item is still there. Is this something that's just going to be permanent and kind of go on forever? Is this the intention, or
It is our intention to continue it for at least the next 5 years according to our plan. It is for the benefit of police and fire so that we can cover the costs and not pass it along to the employees. They represent approximately 2/3 of our total employee base. And so allocations from this to support healthcare services for our police officers and firefighters to keep their individual rates low, to keep us from having to pass it on to them is important for us as a city. And that's how we have proposed to do that because we believe it is consistent.
It props up the overall health of the general fund. And of course, the general fund pays for, police and fire healthcare. It pays for a lot of things. It's every division's healthcare. It's every division's premium costs and trying to keep those low. It's not specifically police and fire, which again was the intent of the language that was voted on by the people. So that I think we're just going to still have a disagreement about that. I thought it might change as the years went forward and we weren't in such of a problem with COVID, but it looks like that's here to stay. And I do not believe that's consistent with referendum. We may just have to agree to disagree on that. So, all right, until I get those forecast numbers, it's going to be very difficult to vote yes on any division level. Thank you very much for the time, Chair. Yield back.
Chair, may I respond?
Yes, thank you, Councilman Morgan. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Councilman Morgan, the FY21 results, those have been published. The FY22 current numbers can be provided to you, and it gives you a better idea. I mean, we're through the end of April, so we have completed 10 months of our operational year. And if those, we can be happy to provide those to all of council if you need them sooner than Monday for your evaluation.
The more information, the better. Some of it is y'all are in the day in and day out operations of the city of Memphis. And so part of the forecast that helps us is we don't know necessarily where expenses might balloon up or be reduced in the fourth quarter on a regular basis. The forecast just is a much more significant number than the 9-month or 10-month year-to-date numbers that we have to look at. Unless you're intimately familiar with the day-to-day operations, it's an imbalance of information between the administration and the legislative body that's trying to pass the budget. So that's the need for the forecast, and hopefully we can get them as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you again. We also have in the queue Councilman Warren. You've been Councilman Warren.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yes. If we go back to where we're looking at the raises that we're giving police and fire and then the rest of the employees, I couldn't see slides at that point, but I was wondering, did everyone except for police get a 3% raise?
No, sir. So, and we put the slide back up if you can see. The fire had a negotiated 3% raise for this year. We are proposing a 5% raise for MPD and a 2% raise for the rest of the general employees.
And if we gave the rest of the general employees a 3% raise, what is the difference in total amount of money that would be?
An additional 1%.
How much would it cost to give them a 3% raise?
Yes, sir. An additional 1% raise for general employees would approximate $1.5 million, so it would bring it to $4.5 million. That's a rough approximation.
So we're talking about So an extra 1.5 million to give them the same raise that we're giving the fire and we're giving police or at least we're giving fire. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. At this time, Councilman Jones, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that question, Councilman Warren. That was going to be my question as well, to determine if an additional 1% raise would equal $1.5 million. But so that question has been answered. Going back to the referendum, police and fire referendum, there was an entry in there called street maintenance. What exactly is street maintenance?
I can answer that, Councilman. Anything having to do with the operations and maintenance of paving, traffic signalization, right-of-way clearance, mowing the rights-of-way, anything that, it's not just asphalt paving, but
Okay.
LED lighting that would be a part of, keeping the right-of-way lit. So it's a pretty broad interpretation of street maintenance.
Okay. Just want to be clear on that. And
Yes, sir.
then, Ms. Ford,
It's mostly in the
you-
engineering and public works departments, but there is some of it in general services and some of it in parks because there's some rights of way that they do there too, just to be clear.
Thank you. And then, Ms. Ford, what's the value of a penny this year?
I do not have the exact number in front of me. I will provide that for you. It is going to drop a little bit since our property tax rate dropped approximately 1 cent. So I will calculate that and give you the value of 1 cent into the general fund.
Okay.
Currently
And then-
at FY22, it was $1.4 million. So I expect it will go down just a little bit. Yes, sir.
Okay. And I guess this is a philosophical question too, and this goes back to some discussions that we had in the previous meetings too, in that we've had a 75 basis point increase in interest rates. It's anticipated that could perhaps have another 50 basis point increase in interest rates. From the standpoint of knowing that borrowing money is going to be more costly, why we're not adding to what would be our savings account, the general capital pay-go in the general fund.
Thank you, sir. And I know in a previous discussion, we talked about that. And it's my understanding that we budgeted for a 3% interest rate, and our cost of our commercial paper right now is approximately 0.6%. But we did. We went up. Okay, so I'm sorry. Thank you. Deputy Walker is here with us. The current cost of commercial paper would be approximately 1.3%. Deputy Walker has built into his budget and debt service a 3% interest rate. So we have some flexibility there.
Okay, and so over this next fiscal year, that's the only type of borrowing that we're anticipating?
Yes, that will be the GO bond issue to take out the commercial paper. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're more than welcome. Are there any other virtual members that would like to speak and be recognized?
Logan is in the queue.
Okay, Chairwoman Logan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I just had one question. Thank you for the presentation, Chief Ford and Chief McGowan. I have one question as it relates to your presentation. I'm not sure what's to come, but I wanted to know if there's an affordable housing line item for FY23 at the division level, because it wasn't a part of the overview, and of course, we're not quite sure or privy to what will be presented at that level. So I'm just wanting to know if that will be forthcoming.
Thank you for the question. I do know that we had $7.5 million allocated through our ARPA, or excuse me, hang on one second. Accelerate Memphis program. Yeah, so we have that in our Accelerate Memphis because we were putting some money in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. It was, I think we had allocated 2 cents and we had split it 3 ways, some for capital pay-goes, some for affordable housing, some for community catalyst. And I think what we made an intentional decision to do, Councilwoman, is to accelerate that through the Accelerate Memphis program and allocate $7.5 million to affordable housing. So that represents our investment for about the next 2 years in affordable housing that will allow us to unlock some other affordable housing dollars.
Okay. Thank you for now. I appreciate that information. May come back during the presentation with a couple other questions, but
Sure.
I appreciate that update. I yield back, Chair.
Thank you. Not having any other questions before me, we will move on to fire services operating budget requests. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please introduce yourself and the title which you hold. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am. Yes, thank you, Council. Gina Sweat, I'm the fire chief for the city of Memphis, 2670 Avery. To my right is my fire finance manager, Teresa Wilson, and my 2 assistant chiefs, Colin Barres and Hope Lloyd, are with me as well. So hopefully between us, we can answer any questions that you do have. All right, so this is our request for our FY23 operating budget for the fire division. Looking on slide 2, you'll see our basic org chart. We have 8 legal levels since we will be moving our apparatus division up under our logistical services division just to be more efficient. And so within those 8 legal levels, we have 15 service centers that we manage. On slide 3, we'll go over just some of the strategic priorities that will be addressed with the fire division. You know, it is our goal to maintain the excellence service that the citizens have grown to expect and deserve from us, and that we have been able to keep that ongoing. Some of our highlights for the year, we do strive to provide the right emergency response promptly and accurately every day. And as the council knows, that's not always responding to fires and EMS. That's delivering whatever we can do to the citizens of Memphis to keep them safe. We do have a vision to be an innovative leader in firefighting, communications, fire prevention, and emergency medical service delivery. And I think there's been plenty of media coverage about the innovative things that we've got going on in the fire division. Some of our accomplishments this year, we have maintained our ISO class public protection classification of class 1 rating. That's held by less than 1% of all the fire departments in this country. So we're pretty proud of that. And that's a team effort. That takes all of the firefighters, every boot on the ground, working together to make sure that happens. We did complete construction of our new Fire Station 5. Our new fire headquarters building that's on the fire campus out off of Avery. And again, I'd welcome any of the council members to come visit and take a tour of that. It's a beautiful building. And then we've also have started the construction of Fire Station 5 that'll be over on Chelsea Avenue. As you know, we continue to support the COVID-19 response this past year through the Joint Task Force and our vaccination effort and responding to citizens in the community that might have otherwise gone unvaccinated. I'm particularly proud of our healthcare navigator team for making that happen. And also our Office of Emergency Management, what we call OEM, we also directed resources and mitigated efforts to several storms this past year. And then we also provide incident action plans for the series of events that's going on in the city of Memphis. including but not limited to the barbecue that's going on this weekend. So every large event that happens in the city of Memphis, we have a plan in place should we have some type of catastrophic event at those services. So that all falls up under the Office of Emergency Management. So with that being said, I'll move straight on into our expenditure discussion, and we'll spend a minute on slide 5. You'll see my adopted budget for FY22 was $169,170,721, and our proposed budget for FY23 is $172,934,780. We did have some adjustments throughout this year. We did receive a SAFER grant. We had 45 personnel that started in February. That was an adjustment of a little over $1.2 million. And then, as you recall, we came, Councilwoman Johnson, you particularly, had a lot of discussion about the EMS revenue. And so that covered, part of that covered overtime that were caused by higher than anticipated turnover in our division. And also, we did have some revenue that came in for our USAR deployments that the task force made. In our M&S line, our FY22 adopted budget was $21,422,215. And our proposed FY23 budget is $22,668,371. There's several adjustments that we made this year, and I'm sure you know, as Chief Ford probably explained, this budget year was complicated by 2 years of COVID and trying to get back to normalizing what things cost. But this past year, we did have to absorb additional expenses for janitorial supplies to keep the fire stations cleaned and sanitized. As our EMS revenue went up, our billing for that service, what we had to pay to collect those revenues went up. So that was an increase. Repair and maintenance of equipment in fire stations. Our utility costs went up this past year slightly, but $250,000. Cost of lease for outside equipment and the software to update that, and that is for our mobile data terminals. And those are things that we really became increasingly important during COVID as we had to operate in a virtual world. And since I don't see many council people here today, I think we all can see how important those computers are to live in the world we are today. And then we also had, it's no secret that the cost of medical supplies across the country significantly became inflated this past year and increased. And then our capital outlay basically will remain the same at $86,000. So overall, our adopted budget in FY22 was $190,678,936. And next year, we're asking for $195,689,000 and $689,151. And that is a little over a $5 million increase. And I will get into a little more detail on that on slide 7. So slide 7 shows the expenditures by our legal level. So you'll see there the different legal levels we have and how that breakdown of those expenses will come next year. And then we'll get to on slide 8, really kind of the meat of where that $5 million increase comes in. We did have some adjustments that were decreased in our budget in healthcare, pension, longevity pay, and then some various other smaller reductions. And then the 3% raise that Chief Ford mentioned earlier, that adds $4.3 million to the budget. And then there was a $426,780 increase to our pension ADC. On the material and supplies side, there was an increase. We're anticipating an increase in the city shop charges of $1,270,166. You may recall during my CIP presentation, I did explain the age of our equipment and how that's aging. So as the equipment ages, it costs more to keep them repaired and on the street. So that's why it is important to keep that replacement cycle ongoing. And everyone knows the price of fuel has gone up, and operating heavy equipment, we anticipate a fuel increase of just under 600,000. Some of that's offset by the insurance reduction that will be moved to the legal division, and then a little over 23,000 in various other reductions. So the net change in the budget is $5,010,214. And we can move on to slide 10 is our the revenue. So we have several items there that we receive revenue for, starting with license and permits. Charges for those are basically through our Fire Prevention Bureau. We anticipate a slight reduction there next year from 170,000 to 106,000. We do anticipate, as we did this year, for the EMS services to kind of normalize, and last year our adopted budget was $20,400,000. Next year we're proposing that we will receive $24 million in revenues. In 2022, our federal grant adopted budget was $2,023,006. In FY23, we anticipate a $3 million revenue there. We did make some adjustments this past year. I mentioned earlier the SAFER grant that came in February, and some FEMA reimbursements, and that was for some minor USAR deployments that occurred during the year. The intergovernmental revenues line is what we charge the airport to provide service out there to the airport. That's the personnel costs and the M&S costs to keep their Fire Station 9, running. So that is a zero net. So our airport service center and that revenues that's 100% reimbursement on that line. Just in other revenues, just small things that come in throughout the year. $15,000 budgeted last year. That will stay the same this next year. And the transfers in adjustments. Last year the adopted budget was $6,380,000, and this next year we're proposing $7,143,750. So overall, you're looking at our adopted budget for FY22 was $33,126,725, and next year we're proposing that our revenue will be $38,561,730. And we can go to the next page, and you'll see that net change is approximately $5,435,005. So that offsets pretty much the increase in the expense line. Of those, just some of the net changes we discussed on the previous slide. We are looking at the big driver there is our ambulance revenues increasing back to normal levels, $3.6 million. And then next year we will have an increase in the FEMA reimbursements from last year's budget due to that SAFER grant, that we'll receive a full year of that SAFER grant this coming year. The other number, the airport revenue went up just a little bit. That's basically because of the 3% raise, and that because it covers their salaries. And then we've talked about the transfers in and the increase there of $750,000, and then a small transfer in from the Metro Alarm. Moving on to slide 14. This just basically shows the division authorized complement. There is no change this coming year. When this was ran, I believe this is through the end of March, we had 121 vacancies at that time, but we did hire a class after that of 92. So that covered a lot of those other positions have already, it's a big class. It's a very big class, yes. But actually it's two classes. It's recruits and a very small group of laterals. So that a lot of those positions have been filled now. We currently, when this was ran, we had 4 vacancies, and those were non-commissioned positions that were being posted. So they're in the process of being filled now. All right, we can go to slide 16, and this is just a breakdown of the major M&S expenditures. As I stated, the city shop charges is one of our big drivers of expenses. Miscellaneous, that's a little over $6 million, about $6.67 million. Miscellaneous professional services is $5 million. Medical supplies, 2.4. The fuel is a little over 2 million, and utilities 1.8. And then we have outside equipment repair, 1.3. As you know, we deal with a lot of specialized equipment, so when it needs repair, that is somewhat expensive. Clothing, 710,000. Household supplies, 380,600. Our lawsuit lines, 300,000, and all the other miscellaneous M&S together comes to a little over 2 million. On the next slide, we'll kind of break down on page 17 the details of the professional services line. The biggest driver there is our Digitech computer, which is the ambulance billing. So they do charge a percentage to collect our EMS revenue. So that is $1,352,000. It's about 27% of that total line. Morrison McDaniel is our the company that handles our promotional processes, and they also do our entry-level testing. Rebound Tennessee, that is our injury rehabilitation program. What this does, it's like a tactical athlete program that actually get the firefighters in to see when they have musculoskeletal injuries, gets them in to see the doctors faster, get them MRIs, get them treatment faster, get them back to work faster. This is a great benefit that the fire division we've been doing for the past 3 years. It reduces their time off for OJIs. They also have the ability to use the program for their family and children, and a lot of, I think even Chief Perez has used it for his son who played football. So it's a great benefit to the firefighters. Fire decks, you hear a lot about the cancer in the fire service, the carcinogens. This is part of the maintenance program, and it also helps us to keep them cleaned on that regular cycle that they're supposed to be cleaned on a year. Healthcare navigators, this is the research project manager. They do a lot of great work over there, a lot of complicated work, and the programs that they have, working with a lot of different partners. So we partner with Innovate Memphis there to have a person that helps them manage those projects. And Tritech, this is a CAD manager that manages our CAD program in our alarm office, our medical director, siren maintenance, and then there's various other professional services. Page 18, we are down to, we only have one lease, and this is for our logistical services support division, and that's a little over $100,000. We do have a plan in the future, hopefully within the next 2 years, we have a grant application out, and we'll be able to rehab a facility and move that location and get out of that lease business. And the last but not least, our minority women business enterprise utilization. Pretty proud of this number. This was through June 30th of 2021. It was at 26.72%. That's a pretty significant increase. Looking back to March of 17, we were at 12.62%. So the team, our planning team, has done a lot of work there, especially through all the construction projects, to really get our utilization number up to a respectable level. And so we're pretty proud of that. That's the highest it's been during my term as your fire chief. So with that, that was the presentation, and I'm happy to open the floor for questions.
Are there anyone in the queue who would like to be recognized? Yes, I see one. Councilman Canale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, you don't have any further breakdown of the $1,156,690 and the various other under miscellaneous, do you?
I certainly do, Councilman. The other, some examples of some that are over $50,000, seminars, training, and education, $253,000. Outside supplies, $246,000. Outside phone, $225,000. Textbooks, $195,800. Internal repairs, maintenance, $173,313. Safety equipment, $172,500. General M&S, $115,975. The rent, which I mentioned. Outside vehicle repair, $90,000. Claims, $90,000. Pipe fittings and castings, $70,000. And city computer service equipment, $62,500. Those are all of the miscellaneous that are over $50,000.
Okay. Thank you. Great job putting this together.
Thank you.
Thank you. It needs to be noted that Councilman Smiley has joined us virtually. Is there anyone else who would like to be recognized? Okay, I have a couple questions.
All right.
How can we track all of those extras, just like he asked about when you bring them in and you say you had 1.5 million in expenses? Same question I had the other day. Is there any way that if a council member wants to just come and look, can we come and look at these particular offices, or where will we go? Will we go to your office, or will we go to the fire department?
You can request, Councilwoman, you can request any information that we have. If there is something in, like what Chief was giving detail there to, is there is a particular line item that is called Miscellaneous Professional Services, and it was for $5 million. So she was giving the breakdown of the big contracts.
Right.
But there are smaller contracts, but all of that information is available, and we can provide that to you at your request.
If I could add, Chairwoman, also, every city contract is online. And so for the citizenry that would like to take a look at any of these, you can just go online and scroll through all the active contracts, the ones we're soliciting, and they could take a look at who it's with, what we're paying for. And so it's all out there.
Okay, fantastic. Seeing no one else having any other questions, I had one other question. At the airport, how many employees are over there for that $4,296,000?
We have 38 people assigned to the airport division.
Is that permanent, or that's coming and going?
No, ma'am, that's permanent assignments.
Okay. All right.
Now, they do we do sometimes detail people in and when people are off, either,
Yeah, I
for
got you. Okay.
accrued leave or something. Sometimes we do have to detail people in from outside the division, outside the airport.
Oh,
But
yeah.
they have to maintain, you have to be qualified at a certain level to work
I
at the
just wanted to
airport.
know the permanent number for $4 million, so that's the reason. The Rebound Tennessee, how many people actually participated in that program this year?
I can get that to you, but I will say that our utilization for people who their injury would qualify remains in the high 90%. It is a very robust program. So people who have a musculoskeletal injury, they will call their service line, and they will get them in to see a doctor within 48 hours. And then they follow up with aggressive treatment. For example, in the past, if I went in with a shoulder injury, they would likely put me through the same thing they would an office worker. Maybe I would go to PT for 6 weeks or whatever. With this program, our firefighters are they're getting an MRI off the bat. They're putting them on programs, getting them back to work faster.
But you have no idea how many.
I can get you that number. I'm just letting you know that the people, it's a high utilization.
Okay. All right, that was my question. Those are all.
Motion to approve, Madam Chair.
I second it. Can I get a vote on this?
I vote aye.
All in favor? Aye. Virtual?
Aye.
Aye.
Do I have any nays?
Morgan abstains.
Morgan abstains, okay. This item has passed. Thank you. Thank you
Right,
for the
all right.
presentation and the work that you do for the city of Memphis. I look forward to working with you in the future.
All right, thank you, council, for your support.
All right. Next will be the city court clerk, office operating budget presentation. Good afternoon. Just great. Will you please state your name and the title which you hold, and you may proceed after that.
City Court Clerk. I'm joined by my two chief deputies, Mr. Spain and Mr. Bowden.
Thank you.
And Ms. Bowden.
Microphone, I'm sorry.
Okay, we're there now.
Thank you. You may begin.
Okay. Who's doing the slides? Great. First, with our organization chart. Thanks to your approval of my two chief deputies, this is what the organizational chart looks like now. We have 4 supervisors and clerks under them for the organization of the city court clerk's office. Our strategic priorities addressed in this budget: to support the infrastructure plan for photo enforcement, including speed as well as red light cameras, in tandem with the traffic engineering and police services divisions. By the way, Channel 13 did a story on our red light cameras yesterday, and I just asked a few minutes ago to make sure that it's sent to all the members of the council. Continued development and delivery of innovative customer service solutions, transition from emergency ticket and docket storage to an appropriate secure storage and retrieval environment for future citations, summons, and ordinances. Right now, they're kept in a book, and they are bound, and we keep them in storage. This request for a budget is also made to raise the clerk's salary to $169,000. Now, the clerk's salary is included in the budget per the Memphis Charter. As we go into expenditures, the bridge to FY23 request, we see personnel services being the largest. We have 59 employees in this area. Right now, it's 3.6. We're asking for 3.8, a small increase. Materials and supplies, 3.5. And we're asking for the same amount, or a little less, for next year. Capital outlay, 36,000. Proposed about the same. Service charges, 38,005. The same. You can see at the bottom what the total is for the budget and the proposed. And you can also see that we're only asking for $200,000 more for the coming year. Comparative spending. Our FY22 budget is 3.824. We're asking for an increase of $119,000, which is 3%. Photo enforcement, $2.3 million. We're not asking for much of an increase, $39. That really comes out to 0%. But that goes to the company ATS that helps us with the traffic enforcement. Speed cameras, $1,097,000. That's to be increased by $102,000, a 9% increase. Looking at the bottom of the page there, you see the total expenditures. The total expenditures for an increase is 3%. To your right-hand side at the bottom. I don't know if that's on your slide. I don't see that on your slide. Okay. We're on the comparative spending, program comparative spending. There we go.
It's at the bottom of it.
Okay. Say that again?
Is it there?
I'm sorry.
Were you looking for 3%?
No, I got it here. You don't have it there.
Okay. Right.
Look at the bottom right-hand corner. You do not see a percentage. That's what I was referring to. That comes out to 3% for total expenditures in terms of an increase. You can see what our budget was in FY '22. Our request is a 3% increase, and the speed cameras is a 9% increase. But that totals out for everything to be a 3% increase that's not on your slide.
And that total increase amount is,
Come on.
that total increase amount is $222,235.
Thank you, Mr. Sane. Okay. FY '23 discussion, year-over-year changes in expenditures. The big hit for anyone, any division, obviously, is personnel. And you can see our personnel cost there. Not much of a salary increase or raise. Of course, this is provided by the administration that's giving 2% raises to all city employees, other than fire and police. Materials and supplies. Go ahead, Mr. Singh. You want to say something about that?
Well, the only increases that we have in the difference in changes is all in personnel services. We don't have any increases in our materials and supplies, nor capital outlay or other expenses. So the only increases do we have for this coming fiscal year that we're requesting all fall under personnel services.
All right. Moving on now to revenue. The bridge from FY '22 to '23, this is relatively simple. Fines and forfeitures, $3 million. That's what we were adopted for in '22, and our funding request, and we see the same coming in for next year. And that is really all that's on that page. We don't have any other charge for services, state grants or other revenues, or transfers in for any other dollars. Next slide. We're going to skip this. Division detail information. Personnel information. We currently have 58 employees. You can see where they are. Traffic Violations Bureau handles 53. Photo Enforcement 3, Speed 2. If you look at that moving to FY '23, you see no change. We're going to operate at the same level next year as we're operating with right now.
We also have 3 vacancies that are in the process of being posted, so we can fill those positions as well.
Thank you, sir. For material and supply expenditures, major MS, professional service. That's the big hit, 70%, $2.5 million. Miscellaneous service charges, about 20%. Computer equipment, 2.5. Outside printing, a small amount. Rent, that's what we're paying for storage right now, and we will be moving to a city facility, an old fire station, to store the books, but we will be responsible for the upkeep of that facility. So we're leaving that in at $41,000. Security, $38,000. Supplies, about 26,000. Small amount for outside postage and all other M&S. Mr. Sane, what's that all other category?
The all, the all other category encompasses the other material and supplies that we use throughout the office. We have several other categories and vendors that we pay under the materials and supplies, so that is all included in the all other. And all of those are less than $10,000, so that's why we didn't include them individually.
Thank you, sir. For account details and professional services, the big hit is American Traffic Solutions, photo enforcement, $1.8 million, which is 74% of the total. Our speed cameras, 330,000, 13% of our total. Excel Business Products, office and supplies, 83,000, 3%. And CT Distributors, again, that's for storage, where we're currently paying 32,000. All others, miscellaneous, 205,000. Give us some of the ideas of what's in that miscellaneous column.
The miscellaneous column includes some contract services. We have a bank card. We have the health department that we send monies to for the child restraint seatbelts. We have premium parking, Xerox, and we have a host of other laser recharge, Metro graphics, all things that help us operate our office efficiently.
Thank you, sir. Okay, let's move on to women minority business, MWBE utilization. Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead. You take that.
Right now, 98.5% of our revenue is spent with minority businesses and women-owned businesses. And this is based on the numbers that we receive from the office here at City Hall.
All right. Did they specify who those contracts are with?
At this time, we don't have the exact individuals who those contracts are with.
Once again, we didn't input these numbers in. The city put these numbers in. So I'll just have to fall on their expertise for that. And that's all we have. But if you look at that, we do have certified female, a small amount. Nothing in there for that one. But our percentage of expenditures totals $95,000, $95,600. That ends our formal presentation. Questions from the council?
Thank you so much. Is there anyone? I have one. Councilman Canali, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, Clerk Lowry. Thank you for being here. You said that the $41,000 you're paying in rent is for storage?
Right now, it's $32,000.
What's the 41?
That's what we anticipate for next year. Now, let me tell you why that's there. Our CAO was kind enough to find us space for which we do not have to pay, an old fire station. But we do have to maintain that facility. And right now, they're looking at the roof. We may need to put some money in for the roof and other improvements made for that facility. That's why we budgeted $41,000.
But so what's the CT Distributors?
That's the current company that we're storing our tickets and our binders with.
So it's listed twice then.
CT Distributors is current.
You've got the CT Distributors under
Which slide are you looking at?
miscellaneous professional services, and you also have rent of $41,000 under major M&S.
Take it.
It may appear that it's listed twice. It's actually not. That number is actually substituted because we're taking on a new storage facility. They will be interchanged. Instead of going to CT Distributors, it will now go to the city police station, fire station that we'll be maintaining. We have to take care of the maintenance and repairs on that building, so we have that amount in there at 41,000, so we can make sure we cover that expense.
I understand that, but this is for fiscal year '23, and it's listed twice. So
Which slide are you looking at?
16 and 17.
Okay. On 16, it's listed at $41,124.
Correct, but it's also listed in the 2528295. So if it's going to be 73,000 to maintain the fire station, then that's one thing, and that's fine if that's what it costs. But I think it needs to be listed that way, as opposed to listing it both as storage in two different categories.
All right, you're saying it's listed under the $2,500,000 column.
Correct, on page 17.
I'm going to go to Mr. Sane on this one. I didn't think that it was in that column. Go on.
That may be correct. I need to go back and fix that, and I appreciate you pointing that out to us. But we will remove that $32,000 from that line item. But
Okay,
it should be rent for $41,000 for the fiscal year '23.
And what the actual number is for upkeep and maintenance to the new facility, city-owned facility. If 41's the number, that's fine, then you need to subtract,
Right, 44
Okay.
is our number.
then you need to subtract 32 from your budget.
Okay,
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else virtually have any questions? Let it be noted, the chairwoman Swearingen has joined us virtually as well. I always have questions, so just hold on for a second. Okay, in your new personnel amount,
What
Is-
slide are you at?
I'm just basically on page 3 now.
Okay.
A comment was made that the clerk's salary includes a budget at 169. Is the increase for that budget included over there in personnel? Your dollar amounts?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So the personnel is reflective of 2% increase for all the staff, along with his requested increase. Am I correct?
You're looking at, okay, Ms. Ford, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just saying, I thought you said they did the numbers. That's what confused
No, they
me.
did the numbers for that page I was talking about.
Okay, I'm sorry. I got the impression they did it. Okay,
No.
I'm sorry. Well,
That's
Mr.
okay, not a
Lowry. No. I'm sorry. Forgive me, Mr. Lowry.
Listen, we're all going to learn.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Ford, you can answer that as well.
Thank you, council. Just as a matter of note for the presentation and procedural, the amount that is presented to you in personnel services in this presentation is not the amount that was presented to you as part of a proposed budget. So an approval of this amount is an amendment to the proposed budget. And part 2 of your question is, yes, the potential raises are included in the proposed budget personnel raises, the 2% increase. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Let me ask you this question. You have a revenue of $3 million. Is that includes the money that you're receiving from your traffic camera photos?
Yes, it does. That's the total amount.
Is there a breakdown for tickets, and then can I get it for photos? How much we're getting in those two settings?
I don't have those figures with me now, but we will get those for you.
Okay, I appreciate that. Now personally, Clerk, you made a comment on your opening page on page 3. You said your salary is included in the budget. per the City of Memphis Charter. I don't have that in front of me to confirm, nor do I have legal here.
What do you mean, to confirm
That,
that the charter says that? or what?
yes. I said, I don't have it for me to confirm or for my legal to confirm it for me. So I must say, today, I will be abstaining or in regards to your budget
Well,
approval.
when you have time to look up the city charter, you will see that it calls very specifically for the clerk to make $2,000 less than the city court judges.
Okay,
That's very specific. It's not an approximate, but that has not been done since I've been there. Now, I raised that question with our chief of personnel, Chief Smith. She referred me to Jennifer Sink, and what she said was, the council must approve that.
okay,
I said, even though the charter says it? And she said, yes.
okay.
Well, for as long as I've been on the council, the charter is the backbone of what we operate on in this city. Quite frankly, I was criticized for not asking for what the charter already says. So that's why I put it in here this time.
That's not a problem, clerk. My only concern is I have not had an opportunity to review it, nor have I talked to Attorney Sink, nor have I talked to
That's fine,
Robin
that's
Wade.
fine.
So that's just me and why I
Well,
will
I
be
understand that.
abstaining.
I understand
But,
that.
we got time later. Okay, can I get someone else? Can I get a motion to move this, please?
Madam Chair, I have a question.
I'm sorry, Councilman Jones, you're recognized.
Thank you. I don't know if Mr. Wade is there, but was
No.
this issue, or is this issue still subject to litigation?
We are currently in court. I'm hoping to get out of court. If this is done,
Okay.
yeah, if this is done per the charter, then it's done. But that's the only reason I
Right,
raised
but
the issue.
Okay, but I think that there's some disagreement between the parties, and I would think that we would be premature to approve the salary range at that level if this issue is still being adjudicated and has not been finalized.
Mr. Jones, I understand
Yeah.
completely what you're saying. And if you'd like to put that to the side, that's fine. Because you're going to consider the final budget when? You have a date yet set for this?
Do you have a date? It's Jones' budget hearing. I'm filling in because he's ill. Okay.
Yeah, so we anticipate later on this month, if all goes well, by the end of this month. Do you have an idea of have you had any indication of when there'll be a ruling on this?
No. My last dealings with the city attorney was that I never made the request.
Okay, and so you're making that.
That's
Gotcha.
what
Okay.
that's what she said. You never made the request.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what I would be amenable to is, as Chief Ford indicated, that this budget number is different than what was originally presented, that if this issue is resolved before then, we can amend it at that higher level. But I would be comfortable making a motion to approve it at what would have been the original amount, knowing that if this matter is adjudicated, then we'll come back and amend it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Also, we have to deal with the fact that it's 32,000 over. So in order to amend it for today for a vote, so we would have to adjust it for the increase in the requested salary and the 32,000. So how much are we looking at?
Point of information, Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilman Warren, you may speak.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. If this is currently under litigation and we move to improve it, do we somehow change our litigation position? And would it be wiser for us to hold on moving on this at all until we have legal advice from our attorneys.
I'm not an attorney, Councilman Warren, but.
I'm not either, but
Yeah, but I'm thinking we only need to address the budget. If he's willing and understanding what's taking place, I can't see if we make those minor adjustments. The budget is what he's recommending.
And I have
if
no
it
problem.
includes a salary increase,
No, we're going to remove the
No,
salary increase.
No, so what I was saying is that we would remove that salary increase and we would come back and revisit it once that issue has been resolved. If it has been resolved in its favor.
thank you, Mr. Chair. That explains it.
Can I get a motion to amend the budget minus the 32,000? Can I make the motion sitting here?
Well, I will make the motion
Okay.
To amend it by a reduction of 32,000 and at the current level of pay for the current clerk, pending outcome of the litigation.
Can I get a second? I'll second it.
Second.
Okay. Who was that?
Smiley.
Smiley. Okay, thank you, Councilman Smiley. Okay.
I'm almost offended that you don't know my voice.
I just love to see your face, that's all. Okay, so let's vote on the amended motion. All in favor? Signify by
Aye.
saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Signify. Canali abstains. Do I have any in opposition to the amended motion?
Morgan abstains.
Morgan abstains. Okay. Can I get a count? I'm not sure who else here now. Nobody opposed. No. Okay, fine. Okay, good. Okay, thank you. Now we're going to move on. I need a motion to move the budget as amended.
So moved.
Second, Jones.
Second by Jones. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Abstains. Canali abstains. Canali abstain?
Morgan abstains.
Morgan abstains. That item passes. Thank you. Thank you for the work that you do as well.
Thank you so much. I also want to thank the council for approving my 2 new chief deputies. They have been very helpful. I can't say any more than that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, it's time for a break. Do we need a break, Canali? Okay, we're gonna take a quick break. We don't need, how many minutes, about 5 maybe? Thank you for coming back together so we can complete today's budget hearing presentations. The next division that's up for presentation is the City of Memphis Parks Division. Will you please give your name and your title, and you may begin after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Nick Walker, Director of Memphis Parks. And, am I in control or somebody else? Okay, there we go. All right, good deal. So the first here is our organizational chart. There were a couple of changes. We moved community engagement from recreation to its own service center so that it could serve the entire division. Moved park rangers from to park operations so that it would roll up underneath an administrator, and separated tennis out as its own service center. But you can see here, we kind of grouped it so that you can see the managed partnerships, the folks that we have management and lease agreements with, and the rest of the division. All right, and the next slide is our strategic priorities. 4 priorities this year: parks and public places, community engagement, youth programs, and good government. Some of the big drivers for this are the Park Rangers program, which increases park safety perception. Stronger sense of safety equals more community participation. Emphasis on program delivery and implementation of a membership model. This will allow us to track utilization and also who's in the building when. And then an increased engagement via communication channels. And these are, again, our strategic priorities. On the expenditure side, the largest encumbrances rolled over include grass cutting, security, Floyd, who we use for our fire safety and maintenance. On personnel services, you'll see a fairly substantial, and I think this is probably a running refrain throughout the day if I had to guess, increase due to citywide salary increases for full-time staff, and also an increase in benefit lines provided by the administration. Lastly, under materials and supplies, the increase is due to contractual obligations for the zoo, which we essentially moved them from a grant to inside of our operating budget just for tracking purposes. So the money really just shifted from one line to another. And then on the program comparative spending, in administration, you'll see that there is a 25.5% increase, but it's attributed really to the transfer of 3 positions from Memphis museums over. And then additionally, the encumbrance that you'll see on there was a contract that we're still working with Innovate Memphis on having them help us with some of our data. And then a council adjustment of $200,000 was for property insurance recovery at the Liberty Bowl from the 2021 winter storm damage, which you'll see that all under 1501. Additionally, the increase in 1502 was for personnel benefits. 1504, also an increase in personnel benefits. However, there was an encumbrance. Again, this is where you'll see the heavy amount of the encumbrance because we're working on contracts that still exist for grass cutting services, chemicals, and equipment lease. Facilities, we transferred personnel from city to MMI. And then the FY22 encumbrance rollover is security monitoring, security guards, office space rental, and exhibit storage space. 1506, the zoo was increased. Again, that's where we're moving expenses from the grant over into operations. 1507, the Brooks, we reduced their management fee from a one-time increase in FY22. The administration had granted them a $35,000 increase. We're pulling that back because it was a one-time adjustment. 1508, the Botanic Gardens, a decrease in city shop charges and transfer of insurance budget from parks to legal. 1509, Sports Centers really is the Liberty Bowl, and so, or Liberty Stadium. I guess I need to start saying it correctly. Of that, the Spectra management fee is $90,000, and we'll likely need to request a budget adjustment mid-year. But that's, again, we had this conversation when we did the red line earlier this year. That is going to be that'll be precipitated by an increase at the stadium, would be our assumption. And then in 1510, centers decreased due to moving insurance budget from parks to legal. 1515 golf, we're going to, it's an increase due to the outdoor activity. 1516, we transferred community engagement and park rangers from recreation to admin and park operations. All right. And then the year-over-year variances and expenditures. Again, Full-time salaries for new positions, $161,000. Citywide raises leads to the $323,000 raise increase. Miscellaneous service and charges increase in the zoo again, and like I said, I keep emphasizing that just because it's a big number, so I want to explain where that's coming from. And then the utilities, most of that comes from the increase at the Liberty Bowl, Liberty Stadium. And then insurance decrease again because of the move of the insurance fees from our budget over to legals. All right. And then on the revenue discussion, overall, it's a slight increase of $100,000 from the FY22 funding budget due to projected Liberty Stadium revenue, and a $200,000 adjustment again for the insurance payout because we had to receive the money and then send it over to the stadium to cover their contractor costs. Year-over-year variance. I could read this to you, but essentially I think the highlights, the big ones there, are going to be an increase of projected revenue from concessions at the stadium. And then the parking, the reason that we showed the decrease there is because we will likely see with all the development on the property a decrease in available parking spots. And then across golf, we've shown decreased revenues because we're going to be closing courses as we do work on them. So we obviously can't bring in money. There'll be a slight decrease in the expense, but that'll be offset by the fact that we're bringing 2 golf courses back online this year. And then you see the other decreases are due to decreased participation. So underneath personnel, again, we shifted here. What you'll see is that essentially there was the move of a recreation program manager to centers from administration, and then really just a cleanup of 3 positions coming over to administration from museums. And the community engagement administrator had been in recreation and was brought over to administration because, again, they serve the entire division. In park operations, last year we created the park rangers position. This year, because of the way the budgeting system worked, they show up in this year's budget. In facilities, again, this is where the bulk of the positions were because facilities includes park operations. And then underneath recreation, there is 3 of the positions that we brought over from museums: a logistics coordinator, a program coordinator, and a recreation software specialist. And then here it is in tabular format. As you can see, we are essentially, again, there is, because of the process of slowly moving the zoo off of city personnel, those 3 positions were reduced from our complement. So we go from an FY22 complement of 229 to an FY23 complement of 226. And then M&S, everybody's favorite topic. And so under here, under the major M&S accounts, miscellaneous professional services made up of management agreements, utilities, projected costs, miscellaneous service and charges, mostly attributed to the $1.7 million management fee to the zoo paid quarterly. And then equipment rental, heavily, that's going to be golf cart leases and maintenance equipment. City shop charges are determined by the administration. And then I can give you a breakdown of the various M&S if you would like that as well. Under the account detail, again, this is sort of a breakout. The big ones there being the Zoological Society, and then the Brooks Botanic Gardens, Overton Park Conservancy, Tennis Memphis, who operates our tennis facilities, Mosh, formerly known as the Pink Palace, Goodwill Homes, and then various others. Under our MWBE participation, we had a total of $2,702,072.51, 23.55% of our eligible spend. And you can see the breakdown there. Again, it's something that is sort of similar to the mayor when he writes down something. Whenever he gets a 0% gold thing, I have a similar policy with my staff that I have a conversation about, how much we've worked with that office, particularly with the new director, to find opportunities. And then the eye chart of the 5-year expense trend report. And that is all I have.
Okay, we thank you so much for that presentation. I have a few council individuals who would like to speak. The first one is Councilman Canali. You now recognize Councilman Canali.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Walker, what'd you say the Spectre contract was about 90,000?
That's what so essentially their management fee is 90,000, and that obviously comes from proceeds at the stadium.
And you said that contract's likely to go up?
No. That contract, the activation of the stadium is likely to go up, but that actually, we just re-upped their contract, and so that is set for the next 5 years.
Gotcha, thank you. And could you just do a quick rundown of further breakdown of the various M&S and the miscellaneous services?
And so really, to break it down, what you're looking at is about $626,000 for security charges. And then city shop fuel is about $355,000. Outside equipment and repair maintenance is $377,000. Chemicals, which is split up obviously between golf and park operations, is $263,000. Household supplies is $254,000. Athletic recreational, which is both the equipment that's used by our athletics department and also the athletic equipment that is supplied to the community centers, is $195,000, and then office supplies is $140,000.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Jones, you're recognized.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Walker. Question that I have for you, can you elaborate more so on the increased allocation for the zoo? When I look at the professional services operating expenses, I see $1.38 million, but when we look at the overall comparative spending, that amount is going to be $5.1 million. So I just need some reconciliation between those numbers, please.
Yeah, and this is one of those ones where, again, I can give you sort of, again, the 1.75. So there is a management fee that is paid to them quarterly, which is the 1.35. Okay. And then there are additional charges that contractually we pay them. Traditionally, they've been in a grant, and in an effort to clean it up, we have moved that to a fixed cost inside of our budget. We can give you, and certainly, again, I would lean on finance to help me in terms of giving you sort of essentially a P&L statement on that. But more or less, this is an attempt to make sure that all of the charges associated with the zoo, so the utility reimbursement, any repairs that are done, and any other operational expenses that we have to pick up for them are shown here as opposed through a grant, which is what they've traditionally been done.
Okay, so I don't have my previous year's budget books with me, but if we have that 1.3 built in, and then those other charges may add up to 2.3 to get us to 3.6, what does shifting everything over, how does that amount to a $1.5 million increase?
Just because you see it here. It previously existed in another part of the budget. Outside
okay, so if we were to go back and add those two up, it would be closer to that 5.1 total.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Now, the second question that I have, I think this had to have been either 2019 or 2018. I saw something on the internet about this program that they were doing, may have been Newark, some city in New Jersey, that they were doing on Friday night during the summertime when school was out, is having almost like a recreation facility for children. And
when did you join? When did you come on?
I started in Parks in 2018, so I remember exactly the way that this went down. So, and you are right,
Okay.
it was 2018.
Okay, 2018. Okay, so tell me about that. Well, enlighten. So 2018, you had a whole half of my colleagues weren't on the count.
Yeah. So essentially there's been called several different names. It started out actually when Chief McGowan was in the mayor's delivery innovation team. Did I say that correctly? Innovation delivery team. And they did a program called Safe Summer. That transitioned into the summer of 2018 as Friday Night Lights.
Right.
And
yes.
It's been called several different things, but that program to this day, and we actually plan on it this summer as well, where we open up the recreation centers for programming, where we have family-centered activities. This year, we're gonna try to focus on a little bit more of opportunity youth programming, so a little more basketball and slightly older, skewed a little bit older, but also still have the youth-oriented programming as well. But it is in a kindred spirit to the program out of Newark, New Jersey, where they opened up the schools on Friday nights.
Okay, so give me an idea of how many young people will be able to serve under this budget. Facilities,
so on Friday nights in particular, or total?
Well, particularly on Friday nights, just to see that program again. Well, both. You know,
Okay.
This is our information session for everything that we want to do for the next year, but we have to fund it today for the entire year.
Yeah, I will tell you that it is going to vary based upon the location on Friday night, because we're going to host it at various centers, which again, based upon the square footage of the facility, the number of basketball courts, that kind of thing. But I think you would anticipate seeing anywhere from 100 to 400 participants on those on Friday nights. And again, the overall numbers that we're able to serve, it's going to be tricky. I can give you like FY17, FY18 numbers of total youth served, but because the last 2 years we've had such serious COVID restrictions,
right?
I would be leery about using those as anything but a frame of reference, but we can certainly get you those numbers.
Well, I wouldn't be, because we've been in a COVID environment. I wouldn't even look to 20 and 21 to see what we did. But I think that if we look at 18, I was hopeful that 18 would give us some framework to say, hey, we did this. I forget how, it wasn't at all the community centers. I was hopeful that pilot would say, okay, well, here's what we need to ramp it up to provide it at other facilities. And then what's the cost of doing so? Because if we 1 to 400 citywide, that's just scraping the bottom of the barrel. We have 100,000 students in Shelby County schools. So my whole intent about our budget is to make sure that we are doing what we can to help as many children as we can. And I don't see that if we're just serving 1 to 400 a weekend.
Well, and so here's the only counter argument to that, because I do agree with you. But what I would say is that because that was our pilot year in 18, and we've also done it again in 19, 20, and 21, what we discovered was that we got diminishing returns by hosting it at multiple centers, especially considering that our centers are normally open until 8 p.m. on Friday. And so again, what we're talking about is an expanded audience, because you do not have typically 400 school-age children, or even in that target youth of 16 to 24 at a center on a Friday night. So what it does is allow us to capture our normal activation at the centers on Friday evenings, and then have a focused carnival-like atmosphere at one of the locations. My hope is that we draw more than 400, but I also am a big fan of under-promising and over-delivering instead of going the other way.
Well, but do we have the finances to do that?
We do. Actually, that is baked into this year's budget. It's going to cost us about $100,000 to do it over the course of 6 weeks, but it is baked into this year's budget.
Okay, well, I'll close with this. I think that just $100,000 to serve the children of this community during the summer is pittance. I was hopeful and am hopeful of seeing a much more robust and expansive plan in order to serve more children. So if, I don't know how it looks. I just would like to know, hey, if 250,000, if we could serve this, $1 million, we could serve how many children? I would love to see something like that. Let us tell you no. But we are not even being proposed something like that. And we're not in the education business, but we are in the children business. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. No one else is in the queue to speak, so it gives me an opportunity to ask my questions. Now, I'm gonna start on page 2.
Okay.
I recall a group coming in here, PALS, and they are taking over a facility in Raleigh. I think they want to use it.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that noted on here? On that
No, because
page?
we're not providing them any funding.
What about Haley Field?
No. So anything where there is strictly a lease agreement and not a management agreement, we do not have an entity in our budget because there is no budgetary obligation other than the high level things which are covered by general services. So anything that is major system. Okay, so at Halley Stadium, if there's any structural problems, electrical problems, plumbing problems, that becomes the responsibility of general services over a $5,000 threshold. The same thing at Green Hill Stadium in Raleigh. Again, if there are any major deficiencies above a certain dollar amount, and that falls into Antonio's break fix line or his major mod line.
Okay, that answers that question. Now, but it comes back to me to ask another question. When we talk about the zoo, the museum now, science and
his mosh.
and okay, what kind of arrangement do we have? Because in some cases, we pay for some things, and then in other cases, we don't pay for some things, and you're telling me today you're moving them from a grant over to a permanent asset, sound like to me. And my question is, what kind of arrangement did we have when we initially started these different arrangement managements?
You want to? I'll give an example, Councilwoman. So the agreement with the zoo, I won't get the date right, but it's more than 26 years old. So that was, it's a city-owned facility. There was an agreement with the Memphis Zoological Society at that time that said what we would do, and it elucidated the requirements of what they would do, manage the exhibits, care for the animals, and what we would do. Largely maintain some of the facilities, provide people to maintain the facilities, pay the utility bill, which is substantial. That is by far the largest. I think it's the water and sewer bill is several $1 million per year, just for the facility. So that's in the agreement. As we have done with others during our administration, we are working to look at those agreements again. We've had some discussions about it's probably time to refresh that because there are some things that just are not germane any longer. So, but they were all spelled out in a contract between us and the Memphis Zoological Society. We have the similar arrangements with the organizations that manage the other city-owned facilities like the museum system and, the Botanic Garden, those kinds of things.
So you're saying you could go in and you can make adjustments to those contracts without coming before the council?
We can adjust the contract, but if there's a budgetary impact, we have to come to you. And what Mr. Walker's telling you today, I will tell you for your benefit. In budgets of old, there'd be, it sounds like our contract with the zoo is only for $1.7 million because that was the grant we gave to the zoo for the operating. But then council members had questions, well, what's this, Antonio, in your budget? Why do you have money for the zoo?
Right.
And Parks, why do you have money for the zoo? So that's what we're doing, is bringing it all together to say, here's the amount of money that we have for the zoo, trying to consolidate it. Some of that was a grant, some was in the operating budget, some was in the capital budget. So we are trying to make it a little more clear.
I guess, right, and I need to make it clear too in my mind, in the sense, how does the city benefit if we're assuming all these responsibilities now? What is the management group going to do if the city is paying for everything?
Well, I would put it like this. I mean, this is one of those. It's like having a convention center. We provide funding for the convention center. It's kind of a loss leader for the city because it drives other revenue. In the case of the zoo specifically, I would point to the fact that the city has put next to $0 into any of the exhibits, you know, the Teton Trek and the Panda exhibit and all those. That is money that has been raised privately by the Zoological Society to bring that world-class amenity to the community. And so, and then in exchange, obviously, there's a free day almost every week during the season for Memphians to enjoy. But so it is a symbiotic relationship. It is, I would suggest, for the city, it's kind of a loss leader from a revenue perspective, but from a enjoyment perspective, a civic pride, tourism-related perspective, those are the things that we've chosen to invest in. So.
Okay, is that true of Brooks?
Yes, and it's a much different model. It's a much lower dollar value. The city has artworks that it actually physically owns and is curated by the folks at the Brooks. As you know, there's a potentially new one that's being contemplated, and that's mostly money that's being raised privately through philanthropy, and there'll be more art that's added for people to enjoy. It's the same largely with the Museum of Art of Science and History. It's Botanic Gardens that's curated to provide a quality cultural amenity for the citizens.
But you did say y'all gonna start reviewing those contracts and seeing what's actually, I guess, revenue being generated and how it helps the city.
And I'll be honest, we had anticipated renegotiating the zoo contract, not because there's anything functionally wrong, but just to update it. Quite frankly, I had hoped to have it done by now, but for those of you who were around in 2016, I was hopeful that we would have had the parking issue resolved at that point, and then we could have moved on to now that we have it resolved, now we're hopeful that we can move forward and get that thing modernized.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I know it takes a lot to keep this city going round and round and round, but I appreciate that. And as long as somebody's watching it constantly, that's reassuring. On page 8, under 1515 golf, is that an increase or decrease over there? Which one am I supposed to be looking at?
Okay. So what you're looking at is an increase in spending.
Okay, so I'm comparing it to the adopted budget or the funding budget. Okay. That was that question. For some reason, that didn't caught my eye.
Or this bad habit of continuing to make them nicer.
Yeah, okay. You see 2 golf courses are coming back online.
Yes, ma'am.
Who are they? Where are they?
Pine Hill, which will be completed this fall, and Overton, which is coming online in June.
Okay, no revenue from those either?
Well, there will be, but to balance it out, Audubon, which is our second most popular golf course, is coming offline. And so its loss of revenue actually exceeds the combined projected revenue from Overton and Pine Hill.
Okay.
Although not for long. I suspect that Pine Hill will see a huge increase.
Okay. Now,
temporarily.
You made a comment on page 15.
Uh-oh.
Administration from museum to administration, is that the same type of arrangements you're doing with the zoo you now doing with the museums?
So essentially what the museum, and we had this conversation actually earlier this year when we did red lines of funding, they would like to pay their employees directly instead of them being city employees. At this point, the city of Memphis no longer has any city employees who work for the zoo. Soon, over time, it's a little more complicated because we've just begun the process at the museum, but every time there's an attrition, they generally look to see, can we get the city to give us through our M&S money rather than have a city employee fill a vacancy? And so we did with 3 positions, we pulled those back to add to our complement.
Okay, so are you saying they're going to be city employees or they're
not?
No,
what I'm saying is there will be city employees who work for parks instead of city employees who work for MMI. They essentially gave us the positions back.
Okay, but will you have to assist them?
No.
Okay, so they're totally independent for us.
Well, no, there are still city employees that work for MMI. I'm saying that it is a long-term process
to slowly remove
remove them because we don't want to go in and lay anyone off.
Okay, I understand. Okay, I was hearing things. I wanted
I
to
know,
make
and I
sure
also
heard
tend to
that.
ramble and speak things that make sense in my head, so I'm happy to clarify anything that I can.
Okay. On page 18,
Yes, ma'am.
I think Councilman Canali, if I was trying to keep up with that $6 million professional services, is that where his 6 million question came from? Okay. What are those professional services at 6 million?
Okay.
Page 18.
Yep. Oh, on page 18.
Okay,
Yeah.
go to 19 and I should see it.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I got you. Okay,
That's yeah.
I got you. Okay. I didn't see that. Okay, I have written it ahead of time.
And Councilwoman, if I could, for clarification, one of the reasons we show a breakout of the miscellaneous professional services is those are contracted services.
Okay. All right. All right. And then I didn't see it when I went back, but in my mind, you had like $5 million for utilities someplace in this package.
Yeah,
I
no,
saw it someplace.
Yeah, and that's actually it's on 18. That is utilities across the division for all 29 centers, all 17 pools, all 7 golf courses, any park that has utilities in it for lighting, water, et cetera. That is the division-wide utilities
Including the
cost.
zoo.
No, although there is some reimbursement there for their water bill.
I bet they got a high water bill.
I don't like to think about it. No, ma'am.
You know, I
They do.
didn't
They do.
know.
Apparently animals need a lot of water. It's weird.
Okay. All right. You've answered the questions, and
Thank you, ma'am.
thank you for those answers. Very informative. Hold it. Councilman Warren has joined us with another question. Councilman Warren? Okay. Councilman Warren? Well, we're waiting on Warren. Is also
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I just had a quick question about where we stand with the College of Art, and do we know if the Ornamental Metals Museum is closing in on the amount of money they're supposed to raise according to the contract?
The last I spoke with Carissa at the Metal Museum, they are closing in. They're doing very well. As it relates to the lease agreement, I believe that it is about to be posted to the city site. I believe it was going through the last step, which is anybody that's done contracts. It starts with legal and ends with legal. And so it has gone back to legal for the final execution. But again, remember that that is the lease agreement signed. It will execute upon completion of their fundraising, which again, I believe she said they're in very good shape ahead of schedule.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilman Jones?
Yeah,
This
thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Walker, I would just have, I'd just like to make a formal request that you bring back, I guess, a more robust Friday Night Light presentation or proposal to let us know, everybody complains about children need something to do, children need something to do. And I think that it may have been various iterations of it, but if we promote it, if we a one and done, say, hey, we did this one time, next year, we may have had challenges with COVID, but for us, I think that for us to take back something to our community to say, here's what we're doing on weekends for children, I think that'll go a long way in helping us articulate what our priorities are from a children's standpoint. And I hearken back to some of the remarks that you made a couple of meetings ago talking about our allocation for parks and services in neighborhoods was much greater than they are now. And I often look at how much of our budget the police takes up. And I think that crime issue is a result of we've taken away some of those activities. So I'll stop it there, but I would love to see some proposals of how we can add a more robust summer youth program. And I know this goes into the next fiscal year. One of the summer months will be this fiscal year, the other one will be next year, but I would like to see that so we can do something on a permanent basis to address that.
And I'll just, to make it clear, I am in big favor of that. Again, the administration, we have a budget. We try to live within that budget, I'm with you.
Council, Mr. Walker, the council controls the purse strings, and so the administration has said what its priorities are. Sometimes our priorities are different. This just happens to be one. I know that you had to come in with what the administration said, but this is an ask of the council, and the council can say, my colleagues, 7 of us can say, yes, this is a priority, or no. But I don't have the information or the expertise to say, hey, this is how we ramp it up, and this is what the cost will be. But that's just information that I would appreciate that we can either say yes to or no to. But we don't have that presented to us in that fashion.
Just as a point of clarification on my end, do you have any suggestion? Because I want to be creative, but I also don't want to be insulting. So do you have any idea of the dollar range?
Well, what I'm going back to now is one penny is a little between 1.2 and 1.4 million dollars.
Yeah. So here's what I would suggest back to you is that I think that we can certainly come up with something much more along the lines of $250,000, because what I don't want to do is give you $1 million plan that I know I'm not going to be able to staff in short time, and I'm not going to be able to afford half of it with leftover revenue from FY22. So if that's agreeable to you, I can certainly have that to you within a week.
That and still something a little bit. The fact that this budget will cover June of next year.
Yep.
So, and then I would hope that this is just a starting point for the council to ramp this up. I know it's very impractical, almost impossible for us to go from the 0 to 100 in one summer. So I am open to that, but I would want to see some options. Just provide options if you could.
Yes, sir. I'll have that to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. All right. No one else seeking to be recognized? Motion to approve. I got a motion to approve. Can I get a second? I need a second to approve the park.
Jones second.
Jones is seconded. All in favor? Aye. Respond by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing none, that operating budget request has passed.
Thank you.
Thank you. 2023 operating budget request presentation. Will you please give your name and your title, and then you may present.
Liza Crichton, Deputy Chief of Staff.
Brian Bacchus, Chief of Staff, Memphis City Council. Thank you, Madam Chairman. First and foremost, I just want to thank the chairwoman and the members of the council for allowing me this opportunity to serve you and also your support staff. I also give thank you for the confidence and the faith that you put in me for the last 5 months, and we want to continue that service throughout the next year. I also want to thank our former staff members, Ashley Hayes, Lakevia Perry, Judy Milam. They've been very helpful in guiding us through this path, on this path and this journey of trying to serve you better in the Memphis City Council. And I would also like to thank our current staff, our first point of contact, Ms. Trudy Pope. Our support staff has been magnificent. Ms. Brittany Wright, Mr. Clay Perry, Mr. Devin Thompson, Mr. Nicholas Thompson, Meredith Keaton, Brianna Owens, Tara Dearborn, Nina Hitchings, Jose Valentin, Liza, our Chief of Staff, and also our Chief of Security, Cedric Young. I also would like to thank our current staff, internal, our IT people who are always on the front line for us. Ebony and Jonathan, we want to thank you so very much, as well as our external support staff, council records, who also helps us in our council meetings and our preparation of agendas, committee as well as full council agendas. Valerie Snipes, Maya, Tanzania, Charity, and Tasha, who also do records for us in our council records. They're very helpful in supporting us and getting us everything we need, especially for your council, Mr. Alan Wade. City Hall, Mayor Strickland, Chief of Staff, Maria Furman, Ms. Madden, Ursula Madden, our Chief of Communication, Ms. Pat Lewis, Susan Steffens, as well as our former staff person, Ms. Judy Milam. Chief McGowan, Chief Ford, we want to thank you very much for helping us through this and then guiding us through this ordeal. We've had many changes in the staff, and we want to really appreciate you, as well as Miss Anita Taylor in your office, Mr. Chief Ford, and also Tristan and Mr. Kennedy, also Mr. Person as well, and as well as Miss Brian Wiswall, and also Julianne Mabry, who's been very helpful with our accounting records in our PTO time. Chief Sink in the chief legal office. All these people have been very supportive of us in the last 5 or 6 months. I'd like to turn it over to Liza to run you through the numbers on our increased level of service by one, also the internal funding, and what I call our hard costs, which is our personnel costs, and our soft costs, which are materials. There's no fiscal year 22 revisions. Our fiscal year 23 with an ask of 9%. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Liza Crichton to kind of run you through the numbers and try to get you where we are today. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. So this is a presentation put together by Brian, myself, and Chairwoman Swearingen, who couldn't be with us tonight and asked us to present it on her behalf. Starting on slide 3, our division's organizational chart. Since January, Chairwoman Swearingen has hired a new chief of staff, promoted a deputy chief of staff, promoted a senior legislative analyst, and promoted 2 executive assistants to level 5 executive assistants. Our office is back up to full complement. Page 4 is our executive overview. The chair's primary budgeting goal for FY23 is to enhance public outreach and constituent services by investing in new staff and retaining already employed staff. Funding for FY23 will increase the division's responsiveness to the needs of the citizens of Memphis and better position the division to work with the administration on more special events and projects such as town halls, dumpster days, and keeping up with our community grant program. Highlights include increasing the division complement by 1 to hire an additional executive assistant, as well as dedicated funding for the Memphis Academy of Civic Engagement and to hire an energy consultant. Page 6 shows the FY23 proposed numbers. You'll notice some numbers are highlighted. The highlighted numbers are different from the current FY23 proposed numbers and will require an amendment from the council. Moving on to page 8, our comparative spending. It shows comparative between FY22 adopted and our proposed FY23 request. There is a 9% increase overall from FY22 to FY23, totaling at $249,167. Page 9 explains these increases in detail. First, the full-time salaries. The current FY23 request number reduced the council's full-time salary line item by $134,073. This amendment request asks the council to put that $134,073 back into the division budget and provide the same funding the division received in FY22. To be clear, the amount here is zero because it is comparing the FY23 expenditures to the FY22 adopted. Potential raises for $49,260. These are a part of the mayor's budget proposal for a 2% increase for all general city employees. The proposed ISL towards the bottom for $77,450. This is the funding to hire an additional executive assistant. The amount here includes funding for full-time salary plus benefits. This item is a part of the current requested FY23 funding and will be funded, as Chief Ford said, by street cutting engineering revenues. In our professional services, there's an additional $150,000 in funding, $100,000 for a dedicated MACE funding, which was approved by this body at the April 19th meeting by resolution, and an additional $50,000 for funding to hire an energy consultant. The total net change from FY22 is $249,166. We can skip to page 15. And this is where we can see the division's request to increase our authorized complement by 1. Materials and supplies. Page 17 shows our largest line items. All line items here remain unchanged from FY22 with the exception of professional services. Page 18 shows specific account details for professional services. The Council Community Impact Fund, which has yet to be determined by the body for FY23, accounts for 35.71% of our professional services budget. Our contracts with our lobbyists and communications firm account for a little over 30%. Polish Consulting will be our contractor for MACE moving forward. Preliminary funding for the council to hire an energy consultant at $50,000. Unicode is our online code database we are required to maintain, and various vendors we utilize for day-to-day office administration and operation. And lastly, on page 20 shows our MWBE utilization in fiscal year 21. From fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 21, MWBE spend in the council rose from 12% to 43.24%, with actual increased dollars amounting to $141,480. And that, Chair, is the conclusion of our presentation.
Okay. Council, thank you for that presentation.
Motion to
Councilman
approve.
Canali?
Hold on, Dr. Warren.
Second.
Nope. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Brian and Liza.
Excuse me, Mr. Knopf.
You're out of order, Dr. Warren. What does Kazukian do for us?
Yeah,
on a
it's
monthly
hard.
basis?
It's hard out here on the wire.
Sure. So Kazukian was hired about 2 fiscal years ago, and their primary function that they give to the council is they produce podcasts. So the chair has a podcast. Council members are available to book their own podcasts at 2 a year.
It's good to know.
Yep. I will say that this has been a bit of an underutilized, but
Yeah, 110,000 for some podcasts.
I will say that Kadukian has been flexible with us, especially throughout the pandemic. So, I think over the winter, they hosted a live stream town hall for Councilman Morgan to meet with the leaders of MLGW after the ice storm. They've also come to in-person events and filmed different events for council members. So it's not strictly podcasting. They've kind of expanded that to the needs and requests. It's a by request method that we have.
Is there a max of what the amount of, is it just 110,000 a year of whether they do 3 podcasts or none?
Yes, it is contracted. I will say that they have also sent to the chairwoman, Brian and I, a list of their packaging, and so what it would look like if we did less podcasting and more live streamed in-person events, and what that cost differentiation would be. But we haven't come to a consensus on what the updated contract would look like.
Can we all get a copy of what their contract looks like?
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. You're welcome. Dr. Warren, are you still with us?
Well, before he wants to make a motion, but I'm in the queue to
Okay.
make a statement.
Okay.
I think, well,
Yes, ma'am.
were you about to make a motion, Doc?
No, I'm just still with you. It's really hard on this delay to get in at the right time and not interrupt people. So please take my apologies, Councilman Canale.
So,
Councilman Jones.
what I was looking at, I know that a lot of these numbers are driven by what they were as it related to COVID. And so what I'm mainly looking at is the major M&S expenditures and the travel allocation of $50,000. Now, at some point, I think that the prior to COVID, I think this figure might have been closer to 75,000. So at a figure of, and when I first got on the council in 2016, the amount that we had essentially allocated $5,000 per council member. If we look at $5,000 we look at $50,000 divided by 13 council members, we're looking at $3,800, and there can be one conference that each set up. So whether we're talking about the National League of Cities, whether we're talking about the Congressional Black Caucus. So at this point, Madam Chair, I would move that we increase the travel budget to $75,000.
Thank you.
Hold on, got something on the floor for a motion, please. Can I get a second to increase it? I'll second it.
Second.
Okay, I'll second it for an increase. Okay, second by Warren, okay.
And may I interject with, may I respond to Councilman Jones, Chairwoman?
Yes, Chairwoman.
We also need to include and increase our budget for lunches. Right now, we are having to pay $300 per council meeting, and now we're experiencing extreme difficulty and feeding 30 people with $300. So we need to heighten that budget item.
Which one is that? On the various?
Well, it's probably included in miscellaneous materials and supplies, M&S.
No, it is not. We're experiencing a sincere hardship. It's hard for us to even find vendors to feed the council on Council Tuesdays because the prices of food has increased, and we really need to increase that line item.
Right. Now, what I'm saying is that supplies outside. I'm looking at major M&S expenses.
It's not
So
on that page.
Well, no, no.
Yeah,
What I'm saying,
Councilman,
it's not detailed out. I'm thinking that it's included in one of these numbers.
Councilman Jones, that's correct. The catering line item is part of the all other M&S. The
Okay.
catering budget as it is now is at $10,000 for FY23.
Okay. And so if we take 300, and so you're saying 300 is low?
It's very low. It's hard to feed 30 people for $300.
I don't agree with that.
Okay. Well, so Madam Chair, I don't have an amount.
Well, we need to get it.
But I would say that my motion was for just the travel. I would think that there would have to be a separate motion if we're.
Yeah, we're going to make it a separate
item.
motion, but I just wanted to interject
Okay.
the need.
Certainly, no problem.
Okay,
Secondly, I have something I would like for Liza to highlight. It has been a question, even as of yesterday. Liza, can you address why our budget was decreased and why we had to, from the administration, and our need to increase and how we went about it to make that happen? If you can revisit that.
Yes, Chairwoman. So our full-time salary line item was reduced by $134,000 and $134.73. This, we believe, is due to the amount of staff turnover and vacancies throughout the current fiscal year. So we've had several payroll periods where we've not been up at full complement. So it appears as though our division has been using less payroll. However, as of now, we are back up to our 27 complement. And so we are expected to reach our spend of the last few fiscal years. And so we are asking not for an increase, but to be brought back up to the FY22 levels.
And a lot of our budget was decreased because of, we have had some employees to leave our office, so that decreased our budget. And now we have come up to our complement, but we're still in need of an additional EA because our EAs are now servicing 4 council members, and we would like to decrease that so that the council members can receive better service and will be able to reach out to more of their constituencies.
Chair, does that conclude your comments?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, we do still have a motion on the floor that was by Councilman Jones in reference to increasing the travel allowance to $75,000. We still have a discussion?
It has been properly seconded. We can
Yes,
vote
but
on it.
Chair, we have a question here, though. Yes, Cornelia.
We have any leftover funds in travel from FY22?
We do, Councilman.
How much?
We have spent just under $15,000 this year.
And we budgeted for?
We had $50,000 in FY22.
All right, we need to take a vote on that motion. All in favor of an increase of $75,000 for travel, please signify by saying aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed to this additional funding motion?
Morgan votes no.
Morgan says no. And Canali abstain. Okay, based on the ayes, they have it in majority, and that passes, and we will have to amend our budget. Are there any other questions from the virtual world? Oh,
Yes,
it was
Chairwoman
never a
has the-
motion put on the table. I don't think she did. I think we might need to, do we need to have a motion for the food?
Yes, it goes under the miscellaneous item. Liza, could you bring
Chairwoman,
back? Yes, ma'am.
there are others in the queue as well, but I know I am. And I wanted to talk about the miscellaneous as well.
Okay, Council,
Yield, I will yield to Councilwoman Logan.
okay.
I wanted to see if in fact we could utilize more for marketing and communications. I don't know where that would go, but in terms of informing the constituents of what the council is doing, what we're doing in our district, we don't have a lot of tools in our tool bag for that. I know when I first came on, I had to use some of the analysts and assistants were using their own personal Canvas and accounts and things like that because we didn't have the up-to-date tools for communications or marketing, and I wanted to see if we could include some for that to keep the constituents aware of what the council is actually doing.
Are you making a motion for that particular item?
Yes, I am.
So what is the motion and for how much, please?
Well, I'm
Councilwoman Logan.
asking. I can't tell.
Councilwoman
Madam
Logan.
Chair,
Oh,
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I may, can we sort of hear from everybody who may have an issue, and then we just make one motion for that total dollar amount, but still hear from everybody that's in the queue
okay, that's fine.
about what their issues are, and we can come up with a dollar amount that we take it out with one fell swoop. I just, the travel thing just stuck out to me. Had I known about some of the issues that Chair Swearingen had, I would have waited, but that was just the nature of it. That's just my suggestion.
Are you in agreement, Councilman Logan, to wait for a total?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
Oh, I'm sorry.
thank you.
Yes.
Okay, we have a couple other people in the queue. Councilman Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to speak to if we still intend to pay the same level in terms of contract for communications and lobbying that we did last year. Don't think I could vote for this budget. Just in my experience over the last year, I think we're overpaying on those contracts for the level of services that we're getting, and those need to be readjusted or renegotiated. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Warren.
Yes, Madam Chair. I didn't really have a motion other than I wanted to move the budget, but I was waiting for people to bring amendments. I would like to amend that we make our, I guess, stipend for meals $350 and bring it back later if that's not enough. And also amend that we review, I think the contract we've got currently with our podcast publicist has been underused. So I'm not sure we need to add more to that. But I move that we have them come and talk to us and let us know what their services are so we can utilize them. So $350 for meals and the podcast people to come and let our council members know what they do is my amendment, along with moving the budget. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. We're taking all considerations first before we actually state a motion.
Chairwoman.
Okay.
I thought we'd already done
Can
that.
I clarify something really quick?
Excuse me, hold up. Our Liza would like to speak.
Just like to clarify, I believe that the staff is already spending about $350 per meal. So if we were going to be increasing that line item, it would have to be north of that, if that was to be included in the amendments.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Well,
Councilman Jones.
okay, yeah, thank you. Councilwoman Logan, I don't know if you had a dollar amount in mind for those type of ideas, but just off the top of my head, I came up with an annual amount of $30,000, which would be essentially $2,500 a month. This is I don't think it could be low. I don't know. Maybe it needs to be $5,000 a month, which would be $60,000 from a communication standpoint. I wanted to get your thoughts on that. So if that's the case, if we increase the catering budget to $400 times 24 meetings, that would get us at $12,000. If we just set that communications budget at $50,000, for instance, that would be a total amendment of $62,000. And I'm just throwing it out there for my colleagues.
Councilman Jones, I still guess I need a little bit more clarification on that 50,000 for communications when we are already paying this other organization to help us. That's one comment. And then my other comment.
Yes, fair.
Okay, my other comment to Liza's group is, when do these contract funds, what's it, Kazuki and Jigsaw come back up? Because I think both of them need to be reviewed.
Yes, ma'am. So
I second that, Madam Chair, and I was just getting ready, I have my hand raised.
I'm sorry.
I don't know if it's
Chair, we cannot see any pictures, any of you right now, for some reason.
Okay. Put my face in the place, and hopefully that'll help.
Okay.
So, Chairwoman, I have two clarifying points. One, to answer your question, the contracts start in the beginning of the fiscal year. So these contracts are up for renewal now for what would be July 1st, 2022. So this is the right time of year to be reviewing those contracts. The second, to the communications, to Councilwoman Logan and Councilman Jones, we don't have a communications line item. That's just a description of Kazuki and of what their services offer. So if we wanted to put money into enhancing the council's communication efforts, that would have to be more specific. So that would have to be an increase in funding for software, increase in funding for staff, increase in funding for supplies. But we can't just make an amendment for a general communications increase.
Chairwoman.
Yes.
Even if thank you. I'm not sure if Kazukian does that, like graphics and social media and all of that. I understand that they do podcasts, and they come out and do, they've done a lot of things, and they've also reached out to try and access us as well, in utilizing them. But what I'm talking about is when we have events, it's more of community engagement on the front end, not on the back end, and making the community aware of the things that we are doing, what services we're providing, what legislation we, pass to make certain that the community knows that we're active. A lot of us are doing it, on our own, but as a body, I don't think we have that. Now, if Kazukian can provide that, I think that would be great. But I wasn't aware that they offered those services. That's the only reason why I brought it up. And Liza is right when she mentioned about the software and those types of things, or even if it needs to be a contract. If we contract a graphic artist or communications on that end, as opposed to all of the dollars going for the podcast.
If I may respond, Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilman Jones.
Councilwoman Logan, I think you have teed it off very correctly, and perhaps as we're having this conversation and the fact that Kazukian is somewhat underutilized, I think it was mentioned that somebody mentioned that perhaps they can come in and tell us all the things that they offer. It could be we are just underutilizing Kazukian, because I'm in total agreement with you, Councilwoman Logan. The community at large doesn't know what the council is doing. They know that the general city, what the city is doing, but there's some things that are specifically council driven. and they would have no other way of knowing unless we tell them. And that's why I would be supportive of that. But perhaps we may already have a mechanism in place that does it. We're just underutilizing it. So I would, I came up with that figure. I can withdraw that. We just look at maybe an increase of meals, what that expense is. But I would almost assert that Kazuki has resources to help us communicate our message. We are just underutilizing.
Cheryl, may I?
Yes, Councilwoman
Thank
Logan.
you, Chair. And I'm amenable to that. Councilman Jones, I agree. It might just be on us that we haven't gotten with them. However, if they do not offer the services that we need and they're not able to obtain them, then, is there an opportunity?
We come back and amend the budget.
Yes. Okay.
We come back and amend the budget.
Sounds good. I'll go back to you.
Madam Chair, may I be recognized?
Yes, Councilwoman Swearinger, Chair Lady.
Thank you very kindly. Suzuki, and they did make a presentation during the joint meeting among the City Council and the County Commission that Councilman Carlisle presented at the Convention Center. They were one of the presenters. So we have been afforded the opportunity to hear the services that have been offered. But I do agree with Councilman Morgan. I think both of those contracts really need to be assessed because I don't feel that we're getting our best bang for our buck for either one. Those of you who attended our retreat, we heard the presentation from Jigsaw, and I don't think that really shared the interest of council members. It did not show equity among all 7 districts as it relates to Suzuki. And I want each one of you to be aware that we pay each of those organizations $10,000 a month. That's $20,000 a month, $10,000 for Jigsaw, $10,000 for Suzuki. So we have to really digest and decide, are we getting our bang for the buck? Or can we utilize those dollars where we can have upgrades and improvements to establish better communication among our colleagues, the constituency, and the office as a whole? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a suggestion. Chief Ford, it's clear that there is a lot of desire to make some movements in the council's M&S budget. Also, there is a move, with the county amending their personnel budget, that kind of thing, there will be a change. Chief Ford and I were just looking at your current budget in FY22 has a carry forward of almost all of your legal contingency, which is a materials and supplies of almost $150,000. It's 140. Surely will give me the actual number. It might help expedite for all of you just to decide today that you want to adopt the budget as presented and carry forward again the $145,000. That means there's no impact to the FY23 budget, no offset you have to have. If you did not carry it forward, it would just fall to the bottom line to the general fund in the unassigned fund balance. If you choose to pass the budget as presented with a carry forward of $144,000 from this year, you will have substantial funds in there from the things I just listened to if you chose to increase your travel with a funding budget increase, if you chose to increase some funding for your meals and your catering, and if you needed to absorb some in some other areas, that would allow you without having to, I don't want to cut off your dialogue about this, but it is a solution without having to find additional money in the FY23 budget or having to cut something else. And the thing I didn't see here is a request to carry forward anything. And Chief Ford, correct me if I'm wrong, if there's anything I said that's wrong.
Okay, let me hear from Councilman Jones, he's back in the queue first. Councilman Jones?
I was about to say, if that's the case, I would move that we carry forward any the aforementioned reserves that Mr. McGowan talked about.
It would be
Second.
$144,435.
Robinson, I think.
Yes, it was Robinson.
Okay. Do you still need to speak? Okay. Councilwoman Easter Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I had got out of the queue, but I'll go ahead and ask my question. When, I didn't want to be too redundant, but when are we going to be able to review those contracts from Kazuki and Jigsaw? Are we planning to do that prior to finishing these budget sessions, or can we go ahead and get a date and time with them where we can do that? And does that have to be in a public meeting, or how are we able to do that?
Councilwoman, if it consists of all 13 council members, it will have to be public meeting for the sunshine laws, but this is at the discretion of the chair. The chair usually handles all contracts within the division.
Okay. The budget chair or chair of the council?
The chair of the council.
Okay.
Okay, Councilwoman Easter Thomas. The next one is Councilman Warren, back in the queue. Councilman Warren. Okay, Councilwoman Logan, are you back?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, Councilman Warren.
Yes, ma'am, Ken. I think that we're ready to move the question and vote unless other people have something they need to say. I'd like to move the question.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Logan.
No, ma'am, Chair, I didn't have my hand. That was from the last time. I apologize.
Okay. Now, do we have a motion to, who did it? And Robertson seconded. Robertson second, correct. All
carry forward.
in favor of the amended, the amended budget for the city council along with the amended carry forward amount of approximately $50,000. $140. How much? I'm sorry. 100 and okay. Let me try this again, people. We have a motion on the floor. All in favor of approving the city council legislative operating budget along with carry forth of approximately $145,000. All in favor, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there any? Is there any opposition?
Morgan votes no.
Morgan votes no. That budget request has passed. That ends all the budget presentation.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Chairwoman.
And I just want to do an FYI. If we assess the appropriations that we're giving to Jigsaw and Suzuki, and even if we curtail their services, that would save us $240,000 a year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our presentation for the evening. Thank you for coming. I hope to see
Great job, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Hope to see everybody tomorrow, starting at 3:30.
Yeah, it'll be just me and you.
But good afternoon, good evening, and be safe. Be safe.